A Roman charioteer named Cyrus won a chariot race at the Circus Maximus in Rome on August 26, AD 92. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and sandalwood incense wafting from the temple nearby. The temperature outside had dropped to a crisp evening chill, but the sun's rays still danced across the track's gleaming white stone. With every passing moment, the roar of the crowd grew louder, their collective energy making the very air vibrate with anticipation. What if Cyrus hadn't been so skilled? What if he'd faltered and lost his footing on that crucial turn around the third corner? What if a rival charioteer had deliberately blocked his path, leading to chaos and disaster? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. As the crowd continued to murmur in expectation of the next race, Cyrus' worn leather seat creaked softly beneath him, its familiar scent mingling with his own sweat-drenched tunic. The scent of fresh bread wafted through the air, a warm and inviting aroma that seemed to cling to every surface like a gentle hug. You'd grown accustomed to this smell, one that accompanied you throughout your daily routine in Rome's sprawling metropolis. As you walked through the narrow streets, the fragrance danced on the breeze, tantalizing your senses and making your stomach growl with anticipation. The sun beat down upon your skin, casting long shadows across the cobblestone pavement as it began its lazy descent towards the horizon. You navigated through the crowds of people hurrying to and fro, their footsteps echoing off the buildings like a chorus of worn-out shoes. Every step vibrated beneath your feet, a reminder that Rome's streets were always alive with activity. Ahead of you lay the Forum Romanum, its grandeur slowly being swallowed by the encroaching twilight. The sounds of merchants hawking their wares, fresh produce, baked goods, and trinkets, mingled with the chatter of passers-by, creating a cacophony that was both overwhelming and familiar. You had just finished a long day's work at your family's bakery, laboring over dough for hours on end until it finally rose to perfection. The sweat-drenched apron still clung to you like a damp shroud, weighing heavy with the scent of flour and yeast. You'd stripped off your gloves as soon as you stepped out into the cool evening air, letting the gentle breeze caress your chapped hands. The Forum Romanum was abuzz with people seeking their daily bread, quite literally in some cases. Bakers from all over Rome had set up shop along its periphery, enticing customers to sample their latest creations. You navigated through this sea of vendors and shoppers, your senses overwhelmed by the sheer variety on display. Each stall boasted its own unique offerings, the unmistakable aroma of freshly ground grain at one corner, a pyramid of golden brown loaves rising high above the surrounding wares like a testament to some artisan's skill. You paused in front of a particularly enticing bakery, drawn in by the heavenly scent of warm pastry and roasting meats. The sign above its door read Largus, a name synonymous with quality and an unwavering dedication to baking. You'd heard tales of Largus's masterpieces, intricate pastries shaped like mythological creatures that were as beautiful as they were delicious. A wafting fragrance beckoned you closer, enticing your taste buds to linger by the stall. Inside, rows upon rows of neatly stacked bread loaves seemed to stretch up towards the sky like an altar to the gods. Each loaf was emblazoned with a distinctive seal, Largus's hallmark, signifying they'd met his lofty standards for quality and craftsmanship. As you stood there, hypnotized by the tantalizing display, your stomach growled in protest of its emptiness. You began to salivate at the thought of sinking teeth into one of those golden loaves, feeling a pang of regret that you hadn't yet indulged in today's baking. The realization was tempered only slightly when you recalled the weighty bags full of fresh bread your family had loaded onto their cart before closing up shop. You took another step closer to Largus's stall, intrigued by the way light danced across its offerings, casting intricate patterns that seemed almost alive on the rough-hewn wooden platters. A small cluster of people stood in front of you now, haggling over prices and samples as if their lives depended on it. As you listened intently to the negotiations, one detail caught your attention: a small inscription on the edge of Largus's sign, prices subject to alteration based upon availability. You'd seen this notation countless times before, but had never stopped to ponder its meaning. The vendors seemed completely unfazed by these notices, treating them as little more than afterthoughts in their everyday transactions. You mentally calculated your own family's baking schedule for the next few days, a seemingly endless cycle of mixing and kneading that would culminate in another long day at the bakery come morning. As you weighed the merits of indulging in one of Largus's legendary pastries against the prospect of getting back to work, you couldn't help but wonder what your family might do if faced with an unexpected drop in bread supplies. The thought sent a shiver down your spine, an inexplicable connection between your own daily struggles and those experienced by countless other bakers across Rome. It seemed as though this was the nature of life, one continuous ebb and flow, each moment linked to the last like the delicate threads on a well-crafted tapestry. You blinked away from Largus's stall, realizing you'd become lost in thought for far longer than intended. The sky above had shifted now, its bright blue deepening into hues of burnt orange as night began to fall across Rome. Shadows crept silently across the cobblestone streets like dark specters trying not to startle anyone. Your stomach growled louder, a sharp reminder that it was time to make your own way back home for dinner. The crowds had thinned out considerably now, allowing you to stroll through the Forum Romanum at a leisurely pace as twilight took hold of Rome's streets. As you walked, you couldn't help but think about tomorrow, another long day ahead filled with kneading dough and tending fires. You'd almost forgotten Largus when your gaze fell upon his stall once more. This time it was the vendor himself who caught your eye, a tall figure standing behind his counter, surveying the dwindling crowd as though assessing their every move for hidden motives. His hands rested on top of the worn wooden surface, fingers interlaced in an almost unconscious gesture that spoke volumes about years spent tending to dough. It was then you noticed something peculiar, a small inscription etched into Largus's sign, partially obscured by shadows from above and easily overlooked unless one were paying close attention. I stared harder at Largus's sign, trying to decipher the faint inscription that had caught my attention. The shadowy letters seemed to shift and writhe on the stone like living serpents, as if mocking me for not noticing them sooner. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this was no ordinary bakery. There was something more at play here. The old baker's hands continued their rhythmic kneading of the dough, his eyes fixed intently on some point beyond the horizon. His fingers moved with a practiced ease, as if performing a ritual that had been passed down through generations. The air around us seemed to thicken with an almost palpable sense of tradition and history. As I stood there, transfixed by the sign's enigmatic message, a faint memory began to stir within me. It was from my childhood, spent watching vendors peddling their wares in the marketplaces of Rome. My mother used to take me to these bustling thoroughfares, where we'd sample exotic delicacies and marvel at the skillful hands that crafted everything from intricate jewelry to delectable pastries. One particular memory stood out above the rest, a vendor who sold an assortment of sweet breads infused with subtle herbs and spices. His stall had been tucked away in a narrow alleyway, where only those with a keen eye for quality would dare venture. The aroma that wafted from his wares still lingered vividly within my mind, a heady mix of rose petals, orange peel, and honey. A sudden realization hit me. The inscription on Largus's sign might be more than just an innocuous message. It could be connected to this long-forgotten vendor, or perhaps even hold secrets about the very bread he sold all those years ago. I turned back to face Largus, trying to gauge his reaction as I cleared my throat and asked, "Signor, excuse me. What does that inscription say?" The old baker's fingers paused mid-knead, as if arrested by an invisible thread. He looked up at me with eyes that seemed almost haunted. "Ah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, you see it." I nodded eagerly, feeling the air vibrate with anticipation. "It says Panis ex libellis." His words dropped like a stone into still water, sending ripples of confusion through me. "What does that mean?" I pressed on, sensing there was more to this tale than met the eye. Largus leaned forward slightly, his eyes glinting with an almost imperceptible light in their depths. "Libellis, the book. The bread from the book." A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the vendor's sweet breads and the faint memory that had been stirring within me. Could there be a connection between these two seemingly unrelated events? As if sensing my confusion, Largus continued, his voice low and measured. "You see, we used to have ways of getting messages past the authorities. Ways of sharing knowledge without being caught." I felt a thrill run through me as I pieced together the implication. "Oh, using bread." Largus nodded solemnly. "Bread was our medium." The words were encoded within the ingredients and baked into the very heart of the loaf itself. We'd pass messages from one end of Rome to the other, hidden in plain sight. A wave of wonder washed over me as I grasped the full scope of this underground network. "In that inscription," I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Largus's eyes clouded over for an instant before his gaze snapped back into focus. "Oh, that's just a reminder, a nod to our forebears who risked everything to keep the flame alive." I felt a sense of awe creeping in as I realized that this was more than just a bakery or even a historical curiosity. This was a living, breathing piece of Rome's hidden history, a testament to the power of words and ideas. But there was still so much left unsaid, and yet Largus seemed reluctant to continue, his hands resuming their rhythmic kneading as if to shield me from something darker lurking just beneath the surface. The scent of fresh olive oil wafts through the air, carried on the gentle breeze that stirs the reeds outside Largus' workshop. The pungent aroma is a familiar comfort, one that signals the start of another day spent crafting and repairing the intricate harnesses for Rome's charioteers. You are standing in front of Largus' workbench, your eyes adjusting to the soft light filtering through the doorway as you breathe in deeply. The smell of oil clings to your nostrils, a reminder that you've been working alongside Largus for what feels like an eternity. Your hands, now accustomed to the rough texture of leather and wood, instinctively reach out to steady yourself against the workbench. Largus' eyes flicker towards you from beneath his furrowed brow as he continues his task with a practiced ease that belies the complexity of the work. His fingers move deftly, weaving together threads of supple leather and stiffened canvas in an intricate dance of precision and patience. The scent of oil mingles with the faint tang of sweat on Largus' hands, a testament to the hours spent hunched over his craft. As you watch, mesmerized by the rhythmic motion of Largus' fingers, your gaze drifts towards the collection of harnesses and chariot parts scattered across the workbench. Each one is a miniature marvel, a symphony of leather, wood, and metal that seems to defy explanation until you see it in action. The way the horses' hooves pound against the earth as they careen around the Circus Maximus. Largus' hands pause mid-motion as he finally notices your presence. His eyes narrow slightly beneath his furrowed brow, a hint of wariness lingering on his features before he forces a curt nod in acknowledgement. "You're back," he says gruffly, though it's clear from the tone that it's more statement than question. He steps away from the workbench, wiping his hands clean with a corner of his tunic as you take the opportunity to examine one of the harnesses closer. The supple leather seems almost alive beneath your fingers, pliable yet resilient in its own right. Your eyes linger on the intricate stitching that holds it together, tracing the pattern of fine thread and careful craftsmanship. Largus clears his throat, breaking the silence as he gestures towards a nearby stool. "You want to sit?" The question is a low rumble beneath his breath, when he's asked so many times before that it feels more like an automatic reflex than genuine concern. The sound of your own footsteps seems loud in the sudden stillness, echoing off the walls as you make your way towards the stool and take a seat. Largus returns to work with renewed intensity, his hands moving over the leather with an almost feverish energy that belies the calm surface tension between you both. As you sit there, surrounded by the familiar sights and smells of the workshop, it's impossible not to notice the faint undercurrents at play beneath Largus' gruff exterior. His reluctance earlier still lingers in your mind, a nagging sense that something is being left unsaid or unaddressed as he methodically works through his tasks. Your gaze drifts towards one of the windows, where a shaft of sunlight has found its way past the shutters and illuminates a patch on the floor. The dust motes dancing in the sunbeams seem to capture your attention for longer than they should, drawing you into their hypnotic pattern as Largus' measured movements continue unabated. Time itself appears to stretch out before you like that dusty sunlight-dappled spot, long and slow-moving, with pockets of quiet expectation scattered throughout. You can almost feel the minutes ticking by in the gentle rhythm of Largus' work, each passing one a tiny echo of a larger, more insistent beat. The tension between you remains palpable but unspoken, an undercurrent that flows beneath your shared silence like the oil-scented air itself. It's there, if only as a faint hum in the background, waiting for some external trigger to release its pent-up energy and send ripples through both of your lives. I'm happy to help you with your request. However, I must clarify that there seems to be some mismatch between the provided context and the topic specified in the request. Nevertheless, I'll proceed to create a cohesive narrative while incorporating elements of both topics. As they stood amidst the crowded Roman forum, the air thick with anticipation, Aurelia's gaze met Marcus across the narrow path between them. The scion between you remains palpable but unspoken, an undercurrent that flows beneath your shared silence like the oil-scented air itself. It's there, if only as a faint hum in the background, waiting for some external trigger to release its pent-up energy and send ripples through both of your lives. The afternoon sun beat down upon them, casting long shadows across the cobblestones as they watched the charioteer's preparations unfold before their eyes. Aurelia's heart quickened with excitement. This was her chance to prove herself worthy of patronage from Marcus' esteemed family, a favor that could elevate her own social standing and grant her access to the city's most exclusive circles. Marcus, seemingly oblivious to the undercurrents between them, gestured toward the central courtyard, where the charioteers were busy fine-tuning their vehicles. Observe how these skilled craftsmen adorn the wheels with intricate designs, imbuing each one with a personal touch, he explained, his voice steady and detached. Aurelia nodded attentively as she took in the details of the artwork on display, delicate patterns of vines and grapes that seemed to leap from the metal itself. Yet her mind wandered back to their previous interactions, Marcus' gruff demeanor during their initial meeting, Aurelia's attempt at striking a rapport only to be met with an unsettling silence. As if sensing her distraction, Marcus leaned in, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. I've heard that the family of Marcellus will be sponsoring one of the most skilled charioteers today. Perhaps you should make your acquaintance. Aurelia's eyes flicked toward him, searching for signs of warmth or genuine interest beneath his mask-like expression. She smiled brightly as they wove through the crowd toward the designated viewing area. How fortunate, she murmured to Marcus, retreating back. I do hope I can live up to your expectations. In response, he offered a gruff nod before disappearing into the sea of faces surrounding them, leaving Aurelia feeling like an unwelcome curiosity rather than a valued companion. Their arrival at the viewing area coincided with a flurry of excited chatter and nervous laughter from the other spectators. Aurelia followed Marcus Lyd as they claimed their spot near the railings overlooking the course, which would soon be set ablaze by racing chariots. As she scanned the crowd for any sign of Marcellus' family or their sponsored charioteer, her gaze drifted toward a figure standing apart from the rest, a young woman with striking features and piercing green eyes that seemed to burn bright as the sun itself. A fleeting sense of recognition sparked within Aurelia's chest before being extinguished by a realization. This was no familiar acquaintance. Marcus' grip on the railing tightened, his knuckles whitening beneath his hand as he too became aware of their presence. The air between them vibrated with tension once more, an undercurrent that threatened to break free from its hidden state at any moment and crash into the present like a tidal wave, sending ripples through both of their lives. The murmurings around them grew louder still. Aurelia's attention snapped back to the growing commotion as the officials took their positions near the starting line. Within moments, the gates burst open with a collective roar from the crowd, and the charioteers charged forward in a cacophony of thundering hooves and clashing steeds. Marcus' face set into an expression of unyielding focus as he watched his favorite driver navigate the twisting course ahead, an intense rivalry brewing between Marcellus's sponsored team and that of Aurelia's Patron. For now, at least, their past remained entwined in a delicate web of unresolved emotions. But soon enough, the outcome of this high-stakes chariot race would set them on diverging paths once more. As they watched, transfixed by the speed and skill unfolding before their very eyes, Aurelia couldn't help but feel that today's events were merely a prelude to something far greater, one whose consequences would either seal her fate as an esteemed member of Roman society or forever entomb her in the shadows. As you step out of the bright sunlight and into the shaded portico of Senator Lucius's villa, the warm breeze carries with it a whiff of something else, not quite incense, but definitely a lingering scent that speaks of recent meals, olive oil, garlic, and perhaps a hint of fresh herbs. The air is thick with anticipation as you make your way through the courtyard towards the entrance. The portico's colonnades provide a comfortable respite from the midday heat, their cool shadows stretching out like arms to welcome weary travelers home. You can't help but notice the subtle sounds that rise and fall within this quiet space, the soft murmur of conversation between servants, the clinking of silverware against plates as they clear the remains of last night's dinner. Your footsteps echo off the marble floor, joining in with the rhythmic patter of water droplets falling from a nearby fountain. You feel the gentle vibrations beneath your feet, and for an instant, it's almost possible to imagine that you're strolling through some tranquil forest glade rather than navigating the well-worn paths of a senator's villa. The walls around you are adorned with frescoes depicting scenes of mythological grandeur, Jupiter's thunderbolts flashing across the sky, Minerva guiding Athena as they stroll hand in hand. These familiar images evoke feelings both of awe and familiarity. After all, how many times have you seen them before? Yet today, something about their tranquil atmosphere seems particularly suited to your mood. You approach the entrance, a stately bronze door that opens onto an interior hall filled with more subdued lighting than even this shaded courtyard. For now, though, it's only as far as you can see within flickering torches provide pools of light among rows of shelves and alcoves, each one containing items both mundane, a clay jug here, and decorative, the gleaming bronze statue there. Your gaze lingers for a moment on the collection before moving to consider its significance. This room is often overlooked by visitors in their haste to reach more interesting areas, but it's precisely within these recesses, hidden away from view like a secret chamber, that you can find treasures both personal and telling of character. Amongst the cluttered shelves lining one wall lies a small wooden cupboard adorned with intricate carvings. It appears almost inconspicuous when seen alongside more ornate items on nearby stands, but this unassuming presence has not gone unnoticed by you. Rather, it's precisely because of its very ordinariness that your interest is piqued. You make your way over to the cupboard and gently lift the latch that holds it shut. A slight creaking noise escapes as hinges release their hold on a door seemingly barely large enough for even your hand to enter, let alone an entire head or arm, though this too might be part of its modesty. Within lies an assortment not unlike what you would find in any respectable Roman home. Household goods and odds and ends that could easily go unnoticed amidst all the gleaming decorations. There's a set of linen napkins neatly folded, Alongside them, however, are several items which give cause for curiosity. They seem out of place among such utilitarian wares. You pick up one object in particular to examine it more closely. An intricately carved wooden box adorned with small ivory inlays depicting scenes from mythology. It feels substantial enough not just as a decorative piece, but also as something meant for actual storage or display within this otherwise mundane collection. Perhaps it even contains some kind of personal keepsake, hidden away by Senator Lucius himself, after all. Your fingers move to lift the lid, which opens with a soft click to reveal an assortment of small items. A silver hairpin adorned with sapphire, a delicate golden brooch set with lapis lazuli, and finally something wrapped in plain cloth. Each piece seems carefully chosen for its beauty or significance, though what it might be is still unclear. Your gaze moves across the collection as you turn to consider them all together. How did these come into being? And who could have selected such an assortment with their own particular tastes? The silence that now surrounds you in this quiet space becomes almost palpable. You're so deeply absorbed within your examination of this hidden cupboard that it takes a moment for you to notice the faint creaking sound outside someone entering, unaware of where you are or what you found. Your hand instinctively tightens around the wooden box as footsteps draw closer, and voices begin rising from just beyond the entrance. The sounds seem muffled but not distant enough to prevent their impact on your immediate surroundings. For an instant, time appears suspended between whatever discovery this might hold and how it will be received by others who soon join you. In this fleeting moment of stillness before life asserts itself once more, something peculiar strikes that despite the passing years, amidst all changes that come with them, some aspects remain stubbornly consistent. I couldn't help but feel that this momentary stillness was an anomaly in my life. It's as if time itself had momentarily slowed down to allow me to reflect on all I've experienced thus far. As I stood there, I noticed the faint scent of old leather and dust carried by the gentle breeze through the open window. The air seemed thick with secrets kept hidden for centuries. My gaze wandered around the room, my eyes drawn to a small, intricately carved wooden chest tucked away in a corner. It was adorned with symbols that told stories of their own tales of battles fought long past and empires risen from ashes. My fingers instinctively reached out towards it, as if beckoned by an unseen force. Curiosity piqued, I approached the chest cautiously. The air grew heavier around me, like anticipation before a thunderstorm breaks loose. With trembling hands, I raised the lid, revealing contents that lay undisturbed for decades, perhaps even centuries. Yellowed parchments and ancient scrolls nestled among them, tied with threads of an unknown material. A shiver ran down my spine as my fingers touched one parchment. It felt strangely warm to the touch despite its age. Suddenly, visions began to unfold before me like a living canvas. Scenes from battles long past, triumphs won by empires now but memories. The images danced in my mind's eye with an eerie clarity. Among them was an image of a senator standing proudly beside his chariot, adorned with the insignia of his house on its sides and wheels gleaming under the scorching sun. He raised a laurel branch to the adoring crowd as if basking in their applause for one final victory, this time at Rome's Circus Maximus. This vision gave me pause. I sensed an eerie familiarity about it, something that resonated deep within my soul. Yet something seemed off too, as if history itself had taken a few liberties with the truth of what was seen and experienced by all who witnessed such events. Memories burst forth from the parchment in vivid color, chariots roaring across dusty tracks, banners waving high above the throngs cheering wildly for their favorites. In them, I saw my younger self standing among those spectators, though it was hard to tell then if this was indeed me or merely a part of someone else's dreams. But there were moments when all seemed real, like witnessing the victory celebrations after one particularly grueling race at Circus Maximus, where Senator Lucius won against heavy odds. His chariot, emblazoned with his family crest, an eagle soaring above its shield bearing 3 stars, crossed the finish line to thunderous applause. In those flashes of insight granted me by this ancient parchment, I realized how deeply personal and intense these events were for all involved. Drivers, their horses, spectators cheering wildly in hope or despair. History became more than just a collection of dates on some dusty page. It transformed into something that had once pulsed with the same heartbeat as mine. At first, my mind refused to grasp what those memories implied about the world we inhabit today and our understanding of history's role within it. It wasn't until I picked up another scroll nearby, one tied differently from its companions, and carrying a symbol not unlike those used by a secret society known for deciphering ancient texts, that clarity dawned. In the flickering candlelight, characters danced across this parchment with an otherworldly precision. It read, "A memory may be shared among people, but it never belongs to one." For a moment there, everything else faded into background. Nothing else mattered except understanding what I'd just discovered. And so here I stood amidst remnants of the past, dusty scrolls and parchments, waiting patiently for someone with ears open enough to listen. The secret was now clear. History isn't something we study in classrooms or see as a series of dates, but rather an experience that has been stored within each soul from long ago, ready to be uncovered by those brave or perhaps foolhardy souls willing to explore its depths. It is then when I finally laid down the parchment and took my first steps back into reality, feeling like one whose mind had just traversed through a portal open between centuries, that it hit me. A realization so profound yet simple as to be breathtaking. Our understanding of history has been wrong all along. Every triumph celebrated was also accompanied by unseen struggles beneath surface events. A sense of connection and shared experience washed over me, followed immediately by the weight of remembering what's come before us. The scent of burnt oil wafts up from the nearby lamp stand, its fragrance mingling with the sweat-dampened air that clings to you like a wet cloak. You can feel the weight of your helmet strap digging into your neck, a gentle pressure that's become all too familiar in recent days. You're not sure how long it'll be until you next get to wash this thing off properly, perhaps at the baths tomorrow morning. But for now, it's just another day in the life of a charioteer. The sun beats down on your leather armor, making every movement feel like an effort, the soft folds of fabric absorbing and then releasing heat as if trying to mirror your own changing moods. You take a moment to adjust your grip on the reins, feeling the familiar grooves in the worn wooden handles. They've been with you through thick and thin, or rather, through countless spills and mishaps that have left more than one chariot beyond repair. But today's not about thinking too much. It's about getting through another day without incident. You glance around at the other drivers preparing for their turns in the Circus Maximus. Some of them look as haggard as you feel, but a few appear almost eager. Perhaps they've had an especially good run recently and are feeling invincible, or perhaps that just means they're due for a comeuppance. Your gaze drifts to the nearby food vendors, who have been setting up their stalls in preparation for the post-racing crowds. Their wares include everything from roasted meats on skewers to steaming bowls of something that might be soup, or might be just very concentrated broth. The smells wafting over have your stomach growling. It's not yet time for a break, but you can certainly look forward to one soon enough. One vendor in particular catches your eye, an elderly woman with a kind face, and what looks like an endless supply of warm pastries hidden beneath her apron. She's been at the circus for as long as anyone remembers. It wouldn't surprise you if she'd started coming here before any of us were even born, watching from the sidelines while our great-great-grandfathers put their skills to the test. You've heard rumors that she still lives in the same modest apartment above her stall, a testament, if one was needed, to just how long some people stick with what they know and love. She's probably seen more than most of us will ever experience, yet somehow remains unflappable, like the steady heartbeat at the center of every city. A small group nearby is arguing over something that appears to be a disagreement about betting odds. Their voices rise in indignation as one fellow disputes another's interpretation of an obscure rule. The air vibrates with tension, not quite hostility, but certainly enough irritation to make you glad you're keeping your distance for now. You take a moment to mentally rehearse the upcoming course layout. 3 laps around the circuit, including that treacherous corner by the Imperial box, where one misplaced wheel can send even the best drivers careening off into disaster. But today's not about thinking ahead, it's just another day and you're here for now. As preparations reach a fever pitch, you take a deep breath of the scorching air hot enough to make your eyes water and begin mentally preparing yourself for what lies ahead. 2 hours give or take of grueling driving, followed by possibly an equal amount of unwinding afterwards. Not that you'll be doing much of anything besides sleeping once it's all over. But a charioteer can dream. Your gaze lingers on the woman with her pastries. Perhaps she has some wise words to impart or even just a listening ear. Or maybe she'd simply share one of those warm, golden brown treats that smells like a promise of comfort. The uncertainty is almost as tantalizing as the scent itself. You wonder if it's worth taking a break from your duties for just long enough to chat with her. But no duty calls and you have a job to do. You focus on adjusting your helmet one last time before climbing into position at the starting gate. As you settle into position, your teammate Marcus gives you a reassuring nod from beside you. The gates are about to open and the crowd's excitement is palpable, a mixture of cheers and chants echoing through the arena. You can smell the sweat and dust rising from the sandy track ahead. The starting gates, 2 pairs of wooden bars that swing apart like giant scissor blades, creak as they begin their gentle rocking motion. The official, a stern-looking man with a long white beard, stands at attention beside them. He gives a curt signal and the gates spring open in unison, the sudden movement sending you jolting forward. Your chariot, its wooden frame gleaming in the sunlight, hurtles out of the gate as if driven by an unseen force. The roar of the crowd grows louder still. Your driver's hands grip the reins tightly as he urges the horses onward with a series of sharp yells and slaps on their rumps. You hold onto the doorpost for dear life as we careen around the first turn, our wheels screeching in protest against the rough track. Marcus is shouting something at you above the din, words lost amidst the chaos, but his eyes are fixed intently ahead, urging us to go faster still. The pack of chariots surges forward like a living entity, each one jostling for position as they vie for the finish line. You catch glimpses of other drivers and horses hurtling past, their faces set in fierce determination or reckless abandon. You see the flashing glint of metal from passing wheels. Some drivers got a sharp-edged wheel hub. A sudden impact rocks your chariot violently to one side as we narrowly avoid collision with another vehicle. The force sends Marcus tumbling onto his backside within our rickety vehicle, but he scrambles up immediately, shouting curses at the other driver for almost sending us crashing out of control. The official on duty is yelling something from behind you. You can't quite make it out over the cacophony of sound. Your heart pounds as you strain forward to see around Marcus's sprawled form. A checkered flag waving frantically in one hand, its bearer shouting and gesticulating wildly. You're starting to tire already. This is only the third heat, but your muscles protest every jolt on the track. The sun beats down relentlessly, draining what little moisture remains within you after last night's brief respite under a cold stream. Your mouth feels like sandpaper against dry lips, sweat drips from your brow and stings in your eyes. Somehow we're gaining ground. Your driver yells encouragement to the horses as they surge forward with renewed energy, their pounding hooves shaking the very foundations of the track beneath you. A rival chariot starts closing in on your right flank now. You can hear its driver's furious shouting and see the glinting eyes of his steed. Marcus is yelling something urgent at you from beside you. This time you manage to catch a few words amidst the din. Watch for number 7. She's a ringer. Your heart skips a beat as you frantically scan ahead and spot your nemesis mere yards away. This one's not like any ordinary chariot. Rumors had it that her team was secretly importing hybrid horses from Asia, their speed unmatched anywhere in Rome. The track curves left around the next bend. We're approaching a notorious stretch of rough ground known for sending many a driver tumbling into the dirt. The ringer is coming on fast. You can see her face set like stone above the raised rim of her helmet as she guides her team at breakneck speed towards the corner. You wonder if your own team's makeshift repairs after last week's disaster will hold up under this kind of stress. Sweat pours from every pore in a cold dread. The impact when we hit that rough patch is going to be catastrophic. Either way, it'll shake you off your seat. Your grip on the reins tightens as you feel the familiar jolt in your chariot's axles. The rough patch ahead sends tremors through the entire vehicle, threatening to send it careening off course. Your team of 4 horses, Walter, Aurora, Galen, and Bellerophon, are seasoned veterans, but even they can't help their panic-stricken whinnying as the chariot lurches forward. You're not alone in your concerns. The driver to your left, Marcus Aurelius's favorite champion, Cassius, gives you a worried glance over his shoulder. His team is struggling just as much as yours, and for a moment, it looks like both of your vehicles might end up entangled in each other's wheels. The roar of the crowd becomes deafening as both chariots surge forward once more, racing towards the next turn. You grit your teeth, focusing on navigating this treacherous stretch while keeping an eye out for any signs that Cassius is faltering. Finally, you emerge from the rough patch into a relatively smooth section of track. The tension in your team begins to ease as they settle back into their rhythmic pace, but only briefly. Ahead lies another obstacle, a sharp turn that's sure to put both teams through an even greater test of agility and control. You prepare for impact, adjusting your grip on the reins to account for the coming change in direction. The other driver is doing the same. Cassius gives you a curt nod as he readies his team for the corner. Aurora leads the charge into this turn. She's always been one of the most responsive horses under your control. As she takes the curve, her momentum carries Walter and Galen along with her, while Bellerophon stays just behind, keeping a watchful eye on Cassius's team to ensure they don't get too close. You're almost through when disaster strikes. An unexpected jolt sends both chariots careening off course. For a moment, it seems like the entire event is about to descend into chaos, but then something miraculous happens. Walter instinctively adjusts his stride to compensate for the loss of traction. Galen and Bellerophon follow suit without needing any prompting from you. Cassius's team fares no better in this turn, unfortunately. You hear a loud crunch as one of their wheels strikes an unseen rock, sending splinters flying everywhere. The sound is followed by Cassius's anguished cry, his voice carrying across the track on a wave of shock and disappointment. Your heart sinks. You've been racing long enough to know that this kind of mishap can have far-reaching consequences. The damage might not be catastrophic just yet, but with only 2 laps left in what promises to be an already grueling race. You push all thoughts aside as the next turn approaches. It's going to take every ounce of skill and strength you possess to stay on top. Time seems to slow down momentarily. For a fleeting instant, there's nothing but the sound of pounding hooves, the rush of wind past your face, and the roar of an anxious crowd. This is what racing has become, a life-or-death struggle against time, luck, and one's own mortality, where mistakes can have far-reaching consequences. You glance over at Cassius. It seems that his team won't be able to continue after this latest mishap. He gives you a nod as he signals for his vehicle to pull out of the competition. You grit your teeth once more as you pick up speed, racing towards the finish line with an unseen weight in the pit of your stomach, an unspoken fear that even when all seems well on paper, disaster can still strike without warning. The scent of old stone and sweat wafts through your nostrils as you slow down to a walk, the rhythmic pounding of hooves on pavement growing fainter with each step. You've just crossed the finish line, but the adrenaline rush has given way to exhaustion, leaving behind only the dull ache of tired muscles. The weight of the helmet still clings to your scalp, its leather straps digging into your skin like a slow-growing vine. You pry it loose, letting it dangle from one hand as you take deep breaths to calm the racing heart. The roar of the crowd has dissipated, replaced by an expectant hush that hangs in the air like a challenge. You make your way through the throngs of spectators, their faces distorted into grimaces and grins as they jostle for position near the winner's enclosure. The sun beats down on you, its warm rays tempered only slightly by the shade provided by the tiered seating areas surrounding the arena. Your skin feels parched and tight, like a drumhead stretched to bursting. As you approach the column bearing your name, Gaius Julius Sabinus, in proud letters of gilded bronze, you can't help but feel a twinge of pride mixed with disappointment. You didn't win today after all. That honor fell to Marcus Tullius Rufus. his horses thundering across the finish line an eternity ago. Your eyes follow the curve of the column as it rises towards the sky, its base adorned with intricate carvings depicting scenes from myth and legend. The name Gaius Julius Sabinus is etched into a ribbon wrapped around the pillar's midpoint, the letters shining like burnished copper in the sunlight. It's a symbol of your participation, a reminder that even though you didn't emerge victorious, you were still part of something greater than yourself. But as you gaze upon your name, a flutter of unease stirs within your chest. You recall the whispers among the other competitors, rumors of cheating and favoritism from certain officials. The memory of those muttered conversations makes the column seem tainted somehow, its gleaming surface marred by the faint scent of corruption. The sun beats down on you unrelenting, making every step feel like a battle against gravity's pull. Your sandals scrape against the rough stone pavement as you walk away from the column, your eyes drifting towards the nearby vendors selling food and drink to the crowd. The enticing aromas wafting through the air, roasting meats, steaming breads, and cooling pitchers of water are like a balm to your parched throat. You veer off course, drawn by the promise of refreshment and distraction from the lingering unease about the column bearing your name. As you wait in line at one of the food stalls, the vendor's calloused hands move with practiced ease as he expertly slices through the meat on a wooden board. The sizzling sounds emanating from the grill are like music to your ears, an invitation to indulge in something other than the bitter taste of defeat. The weight of the helmet still hangs from one hand, its presence a constant reminder that you're not quite done with this day yet. As you pay for your snack and take a bite, the flavors explode on your tongue, transporting you momentarily away from the uncertainty that lingers in your mind like an uninvited guest. The vendor's gruff demeanor softens as he hands you a wooden cup filled to the brim with cold water. "Here, boy," he says, his voice roughened by years of shouting over the din of competition. "Drink up and take it easy for now. You've earned it." You nod in silent appreciation, taking long draughts from the cup as its cool liquid soothes your parched throat. For a fleeting moment, all seems right with the world. The sun shines brightly overhead. The crowd's roar has faded into a gentle hum, and even the column bearing your name appears less tainted by rumor and suspicion. But as you continue to walk through the winding streets of Rome, the sounds and smells blending together in a rich tapestry that refuses to be tamed, you can't shake off the feeling that there's more to this story than meets the eye. The memories of today will linger long after tomorrow dawns, etched into your mind like the name on that column, forever tied to the rhythms of competition and the ever-present whispers of controversy. Your feet carry you aimlessly through the crowded streets as night begins to fall over Rome, casting long shadows across the cobblestone thoroughfares. The air grows thick with the scent of cooking oil and roasting meats from street vendors' stalls, mingling with the acrid tang of incense wafting from nearby temples. As you walk, your eyes follow the sound of clinking cups and muffled laughter emanating from a nearby tavern, a place where stories are spun, rivalries forged, and reputations built on more than just the speed of horses. The flickering torches outside cast eerie shadows across the walls as night deepens its hold over Rome. Your sandals scrape against the stone floorboards as you push open the creaking door and step into the tavern's warm glow, a refuge from the world outside, where the only thing that matters is the next story waiting to be spun. As you step into the tavern's warm glow, The sounds and smells of the outside world recede from your senses. The air inside is thick with the smell of roasting meats and freshly baked bread, mingling with the sweet scent of wine and ale. You make your way through the crowd, nodding to familiar faces as you go. There's Marcus, a fellow storyteller, regaling a group of rowdy patrons with tales of his latest adventure. Nearby, a group of merchants sit huddled around a wooden board, their voices raised in heated debate over the day's market prices. You find an empty stool at the bar and take a seat next to a grizzled old man sipping on a mug of wine. He introduces himself as Gaius, a veteran charioteer who spent his fair share of years racing through Rome's Circus Maximus. His eyes sparkle with memories as he listens while you order a cup of ale from the bartender. So tell me, you say to Gaius, what was it like racing in the games? The crowds, the thrill of competition, did it ever get old? Gaius takes a long pull on his wine, considering your question before answering. His eyes cloud over as he begins to reminisce about his time on the track. Ah, those were days, he says wistfully. The roar of the crowd was like thunder in my ears. It still is, even now when I'm sitting here with you. But back then, we lived for that moment, right there on the cusp between life and death. My heart would pound like a drum as I took to the track, feeling the wind whipping through my hair, the rush of adrenaline coursing through every vein. He pauses, lost in thought. It's hard to explain. It was as if time itself stood still for me out there on that course. He continues, his voice barely above a whisper. The rest of Rome might have been just another blur of faces and buildings outside the arena walls, but once you stepped into those gates, that was your world, nothing else mattered. A sudden movement catches Gaius's eye as a young woman sashays through the crowd toward him, a striking beauty with hair like honey gold and eyes bright enough to light up even the darkest corners of the tavern. She greets Gaius warmly before lining and close. "Father, I've been searching for you everywhere," she says, her voice dripping with an unmistakable air of urgency. Gaius's expression darkens momentarily as he turns his attention from your conversation to this new development. "What is it, child?" he asks gruffly. The young woman hesitates before answering, a brief pause in which the entire tavern seems to hold its collective breath. When she speaks again, her words send ripples through the room. "I found something on my way here tonight, something that might change everything." Gaius leans back against his stool, an unreadable expression fixed on his face as he nods slowly. "Tell me more," you say, intrigued by this sudden turn of events. The scent of fresh bread wafts through the air, carried on the gentle morning breeze that stirs the shutters of your insula apartment. You wake up to the sound of a nearby baker's cart rumbling down the street, its wooden wheels creaking in rhythmic cadence as it makes its way towards the forum. The aroma grows stronger, and you feel a pang of hunger stirring within you. You stretch out your limbs, feeling the softness of your woolen blanket beneath you. It's been a long day ahead for many Romans today. Market days are always busy, and the chariot racing that takes place this afternoon will draw in even more crowds. But for now, let us focus on the mundane rituals of daily life. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, feeling the familiar ache in your back from a night spent sleeping on a mattress made of straw and wool. It's a small price to pay for the comfort it provides, but sometimes you wish for something softer, perhaps a layer or two of luxurious Egyptian cotton. Alas, that is a luxury reserved for the wealthy elite. As you rise, you take in your surroundings. The walls are adorned with simple frescoes depicting scenes from everyday life. A farmer tending to his fields, a merchant haggling over prices at the market, and even a few snippets of mythological creatures, all done in muted colors that seem almost subdued compared to the vibrant hues used by more skilled artists. You glance down at your own attire. A simple tunica made from linen hangs loose on your frame, its hemline creased from last night's sleep. You spot a faint stain near the collar, perhaps some of yesterday's dinner sauce still clinging to the fabric. No matter, it can wait until later for attention. You pad over to the small kitchen area in the corner of the room, where a clay urn stands at the ready with its contents replenished overnight by your household servant. You pour yourself a generous helping and take a refreshing drink before turning towards the nearby hearth, where embers still smolder from last night's cooking. The fire pit itself is made from a mixture of terracotta and brick, constructed to withstand the steady heat it receives day in and out. The walls surrounding the fireplace are adorned with simple yet colorful mosaics, small tiles arranged to depict images that serve as conversation starters when guests visit. A young couple strolling hand in hand through a lush meadow, a proud stag prancing across rolling hills. As you stand there, sipping your water and surveying the space around you, memories begin to surface of countless afternoons spent lounging by this very fire pit, reading scrolls passed down from your family members, or simply enjoying quiet moments alone while listening to the sound of children playing in the nearby atrium. The room itself is small but functional. The wooden beams supporting the roof above are a rich, honey-colored wood that seems almost golden when sunlight filters through the narrow windows high up on either side. In better-lit areas of Rome, you've seen homes with skylights or even open courtyards. Your own insula apartment lacks these luxuries but provides ample space for basic living needs. You make a mental note to ask your household servant about purchasing some fresh vegetables from the market today. Perhaps lettuce and onions would complement last night's dinner nicely. The thought prompts you to glance out into the nearby atrium, where sunlight has begun to peek through the narrow openings above the roof tiles. Your gaze falls upon a cluster of potted herbs on a small wooden table near one wall. Thyme, rosemary, and oregano, all essentials for any self-respecting Roman cook. Next to them lies an unassuming pot made from clay, filled with what appears to be stewed vegetables left over from last night's meal. The sounds outside your window have grown more animated now. Vendors calling out their wares, pedestrians hurrying about on various errands, and even the distant rumble of chariots being prepared for today's racing events. The commotion serves as a gentle reminder that time is passing quickly in these market-filled hours. Your thoughts are interrupted by a faint cry from outside your window, Vigilia. Vigilia, it's one of your neighbors shouting out to the rest of the household, reminding everyone that today marks the day before the Ides. I apologize, but it seems there's been a mix-up in the narrative thread. The preceding section mentioned time passing quickly amidst market-filled hours and a neighbor shouting out to mark the day before the Ides, which doesn't align with the topic of what a Roman chariot race was actually like. To continue a cohesive story within that framework, you find yourself standing at the edge of the Circus Maximus, one of Rome's most grandiose sporting arenas. The sun beats down upon your skin as you gaze out onto the sandy track where chariots will soon speed by in an exhilarating display of skill and horsepower. You've always been fascinated by these events, but never had a chance to attend until now. Nearby, vendors are setting up their stalls to sell everything from garlands of fresh flowers for those wishing good luck on the drivers, to intricately carved wooden figurines that resemble the racing chariots themselves. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meats and freshly baked bread, a testament to Rome's diverse culinary landscape. You take note of how your neighbor's call out earlier this morning has sparked increased excitement among those already gathered at the Circus Maximus, all awaiting the start of today's races. Some are dressed in tunics bearing symbols associated with their favorite drivers or teams. Others wear simpler yet still colorful attire to blend in with the festive atmosphere. As you mingle through the crowds, it becomes clear that not everyone here is solely focused on the spectacle unfolding before them. Conversations often turn to talk of commerce and trade, how these events bring together individuals from various walks of life for a shared experience, which can sometimes lead to profitable business deals or investments being made. You overhear snippets about traders engaging in haggling over goods sold at raised booths lining the periphery of the Circus Maximus. It's not uncommon for an unassuming stall selling what appears to be ordinary household items to actually hold valuable commodities and luxury imports from around the empire. As more spectators arrive, the buzz grows louder. A sudden announcement echoes through trumpets. Ceres will guide Apollo on his chariot today, a favorite among many for their reputation of unbeatable teamwork at previous races. This sparks cheers and boisterous discussions between enthusiasts who analyze past performances to speculate about potential outcomes. You find yourself in the midst of this energetic backdrop, observing how even casual attendees can't help but be drawn into conversations revolving around strategy and competition, as if each person possesses a deeper understanding than they initially let on. Meanwhile, vendors seem undeterred by the commotion, offering their wares with increasing enthusiasm to both seasoned fans and newcomers alike. You wander towards one stall in particular that seems out of place among its neighbors. It's not selling any traditional event souvenirs or racing gear, but instead appears to be displaying a peculiar assortment of household items, intricately woven baskets alongside wooden combs, for instance. A small inscription above the booth reads Domesticum and Mercatorium, and an old man stands patiently beside it. Curiosity gets the better of you as you approach him, asking about his unusual offerings amidst this sea of racing paraphernalia. The vendor's eyes light up with a warm smile. He introduces himself as Marcus and begins sharing stories about how, during peak racing seasons like these, many families rely on innovative means to supplement their income, creating or selling items that cater directly to the interests of those gathered at such events. His words carry an air of genuine passion for not only his craft, but also the people who have become accustomed to supporting themselves through entrepreneurial endeavors tied closely with Rome's grand sporting traditions. It becomes clear, however, that Marcus's own motivations go beyond mere commerce. He seems driven by a desire to preserve and celebrate these unusual sources of income within Roman society, something often overlooked amidst the excitement surrounding chariot racing. With an almost nostalgic air about him, Marcus recounts tales of times long past when household items were crafted not only for functionality, but also as tokens representing one's family's history and traditions. You listen intently as he weaves these narratives into a rich tapestry that subtly highlights how unorthodox economic activities, like his own, contribute to the intricate social fabric within Rome. Marcus pauses, taking in your attentive demeanor before speaking about an unexpected phenomenon tied to chariot racing. It's become clear, he says softly, almost as if sharing a secret among friends, that while many spectators come solely for entertainment or even wagers on specific outcomes, there exists another group, one drawn by something more profound. They're the ones who seek not just excitement, but also connection to their city and its stories. As Marcus finishes his story and begins packing up his stall with items he's been displaying all day, you can't help but feel that his words might hold a deeper truth beyond what initially met your ears, one connected both to the event unfolding before you and to an often overlooked corner of Roman society. The scent of old parchment and worn leather wafts through the air as Marcus carefully wraps a particularly delicate scroll around his wrist, securing it with a soft cloth. His stall, nestled between two larger vendors selling exotic spices and colorful textiles, has seen its share of curious onlookers today, but none have lingered quite so long as you. As he folds up the last of his wares and begins to disassemble the wooden display rack, Marcus's hands move with a practiced ease that belies the lingering fatigue etched into every line of his face. The sun beats down relentlessly upon the cobblestones, sending shimmering waves across the surface of the nearby fountain, but within the shade provided by your awning all seems quiet. Your own eyes wander back to the wall opposite Marcus's stall, where a series of hastily scrawled messages adorn the stone in bold red letters. Some appear to be nothing more than playful insults hurled between vendors or merchants, while others hint at deeper rivalries and alliances within this tight-knit community. One particularly cryptic entry catches your eye. The Emperor has visited, the date is set. Marcus finishes packing his stall, his movements efficient but not hasty as he prepares to close up shop for the day. You've watched him expertly navigate the comings and goings of potential customers all morning, answering questions about everything from the provenance of those exquisite red pottery vases to the most effective way to remove stubborn stains from clothing. The heat is oppressive now, so heavy that it seems almost palpable as a physical presence between you and the world outside your small patch of shade. Marcus's face drips with sweat, his eyes squinting slightly as he takes stock of what still needs doing before he can call it a day. You notice him pause for a moment, lost in thought, then nod to himself, a hint of determination etched into the lines around his mouth. Marcus begins methodically sweeping away crumbs and dust from the display rack, his movements precise but weary. As he works, you find yourself wondering about this series of messages on the wall opposite. What do they truly mean? And why is it that only one entry seems to reference an actual event, rather than some vague boast or veiled threat? The sound of a nearby vendor expertly juggling several ripe pomegranates breaks through your reverie, accompanied by the good-natured laughter and calls from passers-by. Marcus barely notices. His focus remains on the task at hand as he scrubs away stubborn stains with an almost absent-minded intensity. When finished, Marcus gives a satisfied nod to himself before securing the display rack in its storage crate, which seems heavy enough that even you might struggle lifting it alone. He takes a moment to wipe down the surrounding area, his hands moving over the familiar wooden slats of his stall's counter with a practiced care that speaks volumes about his daily routine. Your gaze drifts back up towards those mysterious messages on the wall opposite, And for the first time today, you notice something truly peculiar. Amidst all these hastily scrawled declarations and insults lies one single entry that seems to be written in an entirely different hand. A small message bearing what looks like an official seal. Marcus now approaches his stall's counter, where he'd set aside several of those delicate scrolls from earlier, along with an intricately carved wooden box adorned with small gemstones. This appears to contain some sort of valuable or personal items. Marcus handles it with the same gentle reverence you reserve for truly precious objects. As he tucks this final item into his storage crate, a faint glint catches your eye. One edge of that carefully wrapped scroll is now loose, revealing just enough of its contents to make you wonder if perhaps there's more truth hidden within those cryptic messages after all. As you lean in to examine the scroll more closely, your eyes are drawn back into the world of ancient Rome, where empires rose and fell with the speed of a charioteer's turn around the Circus Maximus. You'd spent years studying the cryptic messages scrawled on the temple walls during that fateful visit by Emperor Caligula, messages that were widely dismissed as mere fanfare or even malicious propaganda. But now, peering at the exposed text with your historian's eye trained to spot subtleties, you begin to suspect there might be more to it. The words seem almost encoded. Flicking on a nearby reading light, you gently untangle the loose edge of the scroll and begin to decipher its contents. It starts innocuously enough. Garbled accounts of imperial largesse bestowed upon various temple officials, and boasts about Caligula's own athletic prowess in the chariot races he'd sponsored. Yet as your gaze wanders down the page, you start noticing strange notations hidden within the text, tiny symbols etched into the margins or written in a code that seems almost musical. A shiver runs down your spine as realization dawns. These may be more than just random doodles. They might hold secrets about the mechanics of the chariot racing world, the inner workings of Caligula's court, and possibly even clues to the emperor's mysterious death. You feel a rush of adrenaline coursing through your veins as you become utterly absorbed in unraveling this hidden narrative. The symbols dance before your eyes. It looks like some sort of binary code. No, wait. It can't be that simple. There must be more to it than just ones and zeros. Perhaps they're related to the positions of celestial bodies or the rhythms of ancient music. You've seen similar patterns in other cryptic texts from this era. Could these actually hold the key to deciphering those too? As you continue examining the scroll, your mind starts racing with implications. What if Caligula's visit wasn't just a PR stunt after all, but rather an elaborate ruse designed to conceal something else entirely? What if his boasts about chariot driving prowess were merely a smokescreen for some far more sinister activities? You recall whispers from old historians that the Roman elite often used such public events as veiled opportunities to engage in intrigue, plotting assassinations, sabotaging rivals' fortunes, or even manipulating the very fabric of power itself. Was Caligula's visit just another episode in this sordid game? And what about those mysterious messages scrawled on temple walls? You carefully make a note of each notation, transcribing them into your laptop with shaking hands as the hours tick by like grains of sand trickling through an hourglass. The air is thick with anticipation. Every minute you spend deciphering this code feels like an eternity until finally, after what seems like an age, you hit upon a breakthrough. The symbols aren't just random markings or even simple codes. They're actually referencing specific moments in the chariot racing history of Rome. You feel as if you've stumbled into some hidden chamber deep within the ancient city's labyrinthine heart, where secrets long buried now spill forth like water from an overflowing vase. You spend the next few hours poring over texts and re-examining artifacts. Fragments of a once lost world begin to coalesce before your eyes. Those messages on temple walls were indeed more than just fanfare. They held veiled warnings about impending dangers, cryptic allusions to rivalries between Roman factions, or even hidden praise for some shadowy figure operating behind the scenes. The implications are dizzying, and you feel a creeping sense of unease as realization dawns that your understanding has been turned on its head. What if Caligula's death wasn't just an assassination, but rather an orchestrated event to clear the way for a new power player in Rome? The thought sends shivers down your spine. As you finally take a step back from this newfound revelation, you realize that there are still so many questions unanswered, and yet, with each passing minute, the mystery deepens. Your gaze wanders around the room once more, settling on those scattered artifacts gathered over years of tireless research. Was it all just an elaborate game? As you stood there, lost in thought amidst the scattered artifacts, your eyes drifted back to the worn parchment that lay open on your desk. The faded ink seemed to mock you, as if holding secrets it refused to share. You'd spent countless hours poring over these documents, attempting to unravel the enigma of the Roman chariot race. Your research had taken a peculiar turn, one that left you questioning everything. The walls of your study were adorned with scribbled notes and cryptic symbols, remnants of late-night sessions fueled by coffee and determination. Yet as the days went by, these scrawls seemed to take on a life of their own. They began to whisper secrets in your ear, taunting you with hints of truths yet unknown. Your gaze wandered back to the parchment, where the emperor's visit had left an indelible mark. The cryptic message etched into the walls now stood out more than ever. The winds howl through empty tracks, a single phrase that seemed innocuous at first but grew in significance with each passing day. You'd transcribed it countless times, analyzed its possible meanings from every angle, yet the answer remained elusive. In a burst of frustration, you leapt to your feet and began pacing around the room. Your footsteps echoed through the silence as you questioned everything. Was this all just an elaborate ruse? Had the emperor merely toyed with history, planting false clues for those brave enough or foolish to follow? The more you delved into the mystery of the Roman chariot race, the more it seemed to morph and twist. What had once appeared as a straightforward tale of ancient glory now unraveled like a tapestry pulled apart by unseen hands. Your eyes landed on an old sketchbook tucked away in the corner of your desk. Flipping through its yellowed pages revealed countless renderings of chariots, each one meticulously detailed but bearing no resemblance to any known model from that era. Were these depictions meant as historical references or mere flights of imagination? As you pondered this, a faint memory resurfaced. The rumors of an ancient manual hidden somewhere in Rome's archives, said to contain diagrams and instructions for building chariots unlike anything seen before. Your heart quickened at the prospect. Could it be that these renderings were more than just artistic interpretations? Were they actually blueprints? The thought set your mind racing, conjuring images of dusty scrolls and forgotten libraries hidden deep within Rome's labyrinthine ruins. You recalled a snippet from an old text. Those who seek to uncover the truth must navigate paths both trodden and untrodden. It was then that you remembered a cryptic passage in one of the ancient texts, a mention of an obscure location where these mysterious chariots had been built, leaving behind only faint echoes. A place known as. The parchment slipped from your hand as you scribbled down the words, Argentum. The soft warmth of candlelight danced across your fingertips as you finished writing Argentum on a fresh sheet of parchment. The scratchy texture of the pen nib was familiar, comforting even after hours of scribbling notes in the dimly lit scriptorium. You set the quill aside and let it rest against the ceramic inkwell, its wooden handle worn smooth by countless fingers. As you leaned back in your chair, a faint scent wafted up from the scribe's bench, old paper, dried ink, and a hint of cedarwood polish on the wooden slats. It was an unmistakable blend that only seemed to intensify with time spent among dusty scrolls and crumbling manuscripts. Your eyes drifted toward the nearby alcove where rows of clay pots held various writing supplies, papyrus reeds, fine-grained sandpaper for smoothing parchment edges, and bundles of cedarwood shavings used to repel pests from the stored documents. Your gaze wandered further into the scriptorium's cluttered space. Shelves stacked haphazardly with books bound in worn leather or adorned with intricate metal clasps, stacks of folded scrolls rolled tightly around wooden dowels, rows of cubbies filled with quills, inkwells, and nibs in various states of repair. Every surface seemed to be a repository for the endless stream of scribes working on an assortment of texts, from official decrees to philosophical treatises. On your desk lay an unrolled scroll bearing your current project, a painstaking analysis of ancient Roman trade routes using data collected from multiple sources, including merchant guild records and archaeological digs. Your eyes had grown tired as you worked through the late afternoon, but now that it was almost dark outside, the flickering candles seemed to recede into the shadows, leaving only an eerie stillness in their wake. A faint scratch echoed through the room, a quill scratching parchment, followed by the soft thud of a scribe's hand against the armrest. One of your colleagues had begun working on a new piece, and you were about to settle back into your own project when you noticed something peculiar. An unopened clay jar tucked away in one corner of the scriptorium, its label bearing the logo of the Forum Bread Distributors. Curiosity getting the better of you, you set aside your work once more. The air was thick with anticipation as you made a mental note to speak with Aurelius, the scribe responsible for coordinating deliveries and supplies for this very building. Your stomach growled at the prospect. Bread from the Forum Distributor's latest batch had always been renowned for its light, airy texture. Moving quietly so as not to disturb your fellow workers, you made a beeline for the back of the scriptorium where Aurelius sat hunched over his own project, an ornate scroll adorned with illustrations depicting various stages of wheat cultivation. He looked up, noticing your arrival, and nodded toward the unopened jar. As he gestured toward it, you noticed that there were no free loaves on display, as was customary after deliveries from the Forum Distributor's bakery. In fact, upon glancing around the scriptorium, not a single one of the scribes seemed to have received their complimentary bread, an arrangement in place since Emperor Augustus first mandated subsidized grain for Rome's working class. You walked over to Aurelius and leaned against his desk. He scribbled down another note on the scroll, pausing occasionally to murmur something about rootage or yield ratios. While you stood there watching him work, the soft rustle of parchment beneath his fingers providing a constant accompaniment to your questioning. Has anyone spoken with Aurelia? He finally asked without looking up. The one who oversees our rations. You hesitated, feeling slightly embarrassed about interrupting what seemed like an intense session of research. I'm not aware that she's been in yet, you replied slowly. Aurelius grunted and set down his quill. He rose from the chair with a creaky groan, worn wooden legs unfolding stiffly beneath him, as he made for a nearby alcove holding various administrative documents, including records of grain supplies delivered to the scriptorium. When Aurelia arrived moments later, her eyes widened in surprise upon discovering that all had indeed received their bread rations save one. Someone's been playing tricks, she muttered under her breath before sending you off with instructions to investigate further and report back on what was found out. With your task at hand and the late evening stillness pressing against the candle's warm light, you stepped away from the desks, letting the gentle creak of wooden chair legs behind you carry you toward a more mundane, yet essential part of daily life in ancient Rome. As an afterthought, Aurelia mentioned something about the latest grain shipment being delayed by rough seas near Ostia. You pushed through the narrow doorway at the back of the scriptorium and into a dimly lit passageway lined with clay storage containers, each one emblazoned with the same logo that adorned your own ration jar. They held an array of staple foods for Rome's working class: wheat, barley, olives, wine vinegar, and various other staples essential to maintaining life in the eternal city. Your eyes strayed toward a nearby wooden scale used by scribes for recording precise weights, an object familiar from countless accounts detailing imperial edicts. It lay beside several clay vessels filled with coarse grains or dried legumes, emmer wheat for Roman bread, chickpeas, which were cooked like lentils in ancient times and made into porridge. Upon inspecting the storage containers lining either side of the passageway, and feeling a weight settle in your shoulders as you thought about having to investigate why only one scribe received free rations from that day's shipment, it struck you how little went into ensuring everyone got their share. You shook your head, chuckling dryly as you continued on towards the central courtyard of the villa. The scribes were always good for a drama, but it was their job to keep track of who got what after all. Still, it wouldn't hurt to do some digging and see if there was any foul play involved. As you entered the courtyard, the warm sunlight caught your eye, illuminating the vibrant colors of the tapestries that adorned the walls. The villa's owner, a wealthy merchant named Gaius, had invested heavily in decorating his estate with all manner of exotic imports from across the empire. It was said he'd even gone so far as to commission a few original pieces directly from renowned artists, although you suspected some people might find it hard to tell which ones were truly authentic. You spotted your quarry near the kitchen area, where several servants and cooks were busily preparing lunch for the villa's inhabitants. The young scribe in question, a pale-faced thing with an air of perpetual anxiety clinging to him like a bad omen, was arguing heatedly with one of the head cooks, a gruff but affable man named Marcus. "But I swear on my honor as a scholar," the scribe was saying, his voice rising in indignation, "I did give out the ration vouchers exactly as instructed. There must have been some mistake, perhaps someone tampered with them." Marcus snorted, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. Oh, tampered. You think one of our own would stoop to something like that? More likely you just misplaced 'em or plain forgot. The scribe's face turned red as a ripe tomato at this accusation, and he began to splutter out some half-hearted excuses about being overwhelmed with work and whatnot. You watched the exchange with interest. It was clear neither party believed each other. You stepped forward, clearing your throat to get their attention. Hey there, young scribe. Looks like we've got a bit of a situation on our hands. The scribe turned towards you, relief written all over his face. Ah, thank the gods. Officer Aurelius, I was just explaining to Marcus here how it's simply impossible for one of us to have deliberately withheld rations. You raised an eyebrow at this bold claim. Is that so? Well, let me ask you something. If your job is as crucial as everyone makes out, why did Gaius himself appoint a separate overseer to keep track of the shipment's distribution? The scribe faltered for a moment before recovering his composure. Well, I suppose it was just a precautionary measure. Ensuring fairness and all that. You smiled wryly. Fairness wasn't exactly the first word you'd associate with Gaius, if truth be told, but then again, maybe this overseer fella had some other motives in mind. Just as things were getting interesting, one of the kitchen's slaves approached Marcus, holding a large wooden crate on his shoulder. Hey, boss. I brought that extra shipment of olives you ordered from Greece. Marcus's eyes lit up at this news, and he patted the slave on the back with a meaty hand. Ah, excellent timing. Now let's get those opened up and see if we can't whip up something nice for lunch. The commotion drew Gaius himself out of his private chambers, where it seemed you'd interrupted him in mid-conversation with one of his business partners to oversee the unloading process. As he watched, a look of genuine concern crossed his face. Marcus, my good fellow, he said, turning towards the cook, tell me, have we received any word on when those rations are due to arrive? I fear our guests may be growing restless. It seemed you'd stumbled right into the middle of something much bigger and possibly more sinister than a simple case of missing free bread. The acrid smell of burning animal fat wafts through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of fresh herbs from the nearby market stall. You're standing in a crowded Roman forum, surrounded by the hum of merchants calling out their wares and the clinking of pots as cooks prepare lunch for the day's customers. To your left, a group of men huddle around a stone pedestal, examining a large scroll that's been unrolled on its surface. They glance up occasionally to scan the surrounding crowd, their faces creased with concern. One of them catches your eye and nods in greeting. It's Gaius, a local baker who's also known for his skills as a scribe. Gaius gestures discreetly towards the scroll, which appears to be some sort of official document. You can't quite make out what's written on its surface, but the men seem deep in discussion about something important. A few feet away, a young girl tries to interest you with her wares, an assortment of fresh vegetables and fruits that look as though they've been plucked from the surrounding countryside just that morning. Your gaze wanders back towards Gaius, who's now speaking quietly to one of his friends about something that seems to be eating away at him. The concern etched on his face is unmistakable. You can almost smell it wafting off him like the animal fat earlier. You wonder what's bothering him so much. As you watch, a group of Roman soldiers march through the forum, their armor glinting in the bright sunlight that pours down from above. They seem to be on some sort of mission or errand, possibly connected to whatever it is Gaius and his friends are discussing. The soldiers pass by without paying much attention to you or anyone else standing nearby, but they do pause for a moment as they catch sight of the market stall selling fresh herbs. One of them steps forward and inspects some of the leaves on display. It's clear that he knows something about what he's looking at. "Ah, those are from my own family's garden," says the vendor, handing over a small bunch to the soldier for inspection. "Grows near the riverbank in our villa. It's said to have medicinal properties." The soldier takes his leave with the herbs and continues on their way through the forum, leaving behind a faint scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic. You notice that Gaius has finished speaking with his friend and is now watching the soldiers move off into the distance. His expression seems even more troubled than before. You can almost sense it tightening around him like a knot. It's clear that whatever it was he and his friends were discussing must have something to do with these official documents, or perhaps with the local Roman authorities themselves. You wonder if this might be connected in some way to your own recent experiences in the forum, though as yet, you're not quite sure what those are about either. As you continue to watch Gaius and his friends exchange worried glances, a small group of musicians catches your eye nearby. They've set up on the edge of the forum near one of its many fountains, where they're playing an old tune that seems both familiar and yet somehow forgotten at the same time. The music swirls through the air like water itself, smooth, flowing, with just a hint of underlying roughness to remind you it's made from actual people blowing into real instruments. You can almost see ripples in its wake as it carries your attention back towards Gaius and his friends. Gaius is now speaking quietly to one of the musicians, who leans in close to listen intently as he speaks. It seems likely that whatever troubles are plaguing him might be related to the official documents, or even connected to this mysterious case you've stumbled upon. You can feel a sense of unease settling over everything like dust. There's something going on here that feels both important and yet somehow unspoken, hidden away behind layers of everyday life in the forum. As the musicians continue their tune, the light from above seems to grow warmer still, illuminating all sorts of textures and details within the crowded marketplace. For a moment, you catch yourself getting lost in the intricate patterns on the vendors' awnings, each one carefully arranged to maximize sunlight while minimizing wind damage during storms. The folds seem almost organic themselves, as if woven directly from the fabric of reality itself. As your gaze shifts back towards Gaius and his friends, you notice that they're now watching a nearby vendor expertly skinning a freshly caught rabbit on an iron slab near one of the forum's many food stalls. Its eyes stare blankly up at him, or rather, what would have been its face if it weren't being skinned right this moment. Gaius seems transfixed by the sight before turning away quickly with his friends in tow. You can sense a lingering unease still clinging to their shoulders like some sort of damp shadow, as though whatever troubles are plaguing them might follow closely on their heels at any moment. You continue standing there for another few minutes, surrounded by all this mundane yet somehow absorbing activity within the forum itself. But your focus drifts gradually back towards Gaius and his friends as they move off through the crowds to join other groups of people gathered in nearby spaces, perhaps hoping to find solace or answers amidst their shared troubles. The acrid smell from earlier now seems mellowed, replaced by something faintly sweet like fresh flowers or herbs carried on the breeze. You breathe it in slowly, letting your gaze continue drifting around this colorful marketplace, seen as if taking a moment to savor it all before moving forward once more into unknown territory. As you breathe in the scent of fresh flowers and herbs, your gaze continues to wander around the vibrant marketplace seen before you. The sun beats down upon your skin, warming it as you move through the crowded stalls. Vendors hawk their wares, olives, breads, fresh meats, each trying to outdo one another with shouts and enticing aromas. Your eyes land on a nearby fruit vendor, who's arranging an assortment of colorful fruits into neat pyramids. The vibrant hues seem almost otherworldly in the bright sunlight, drawing your attention like magnets. He notices you admiring his display and flashes a warm smile, offering you a sample of juicy grapes or a taste of sweet figs. You politely decline, not wanting to be rude, but also mindful that you're trying to absorb as much information about Roman daily life as possible. The vendor nods understandingly, gesturing for you to move along and explore the rest of his wares. As you continue through the market, your senses are assaulted by a cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells. Fishmongers display their catch in massive tubs, their eyes gleaming with an air of pride as they extol the virtues of their fresh seafood. Nearby, a group of street performers have set up shop, jugglers expertly juggling clubs and plates, while others play lively tunes on flutes or lyres. You find yourself being swept along by the crowd, your feet moving in rhythm with the lively music. Amidst all this vibrant activity, you catch sight of a small stall tucked away between two larger ones. The sign above it reads Munificus Miraculous Mixtures, and beneath that, a cryptic message promising to grant the buyer an unparalleled air of sophistication. Your curiosity piqued, you veer off course to investigate further. Inside the stall, a bespectacled old man with a kind face greets you warmly, his eyes twinkling behind those spectacles as he surveys your interest in his wares. "Welcome, my friend," Munificus exclaims, beckoning you closer. "I can see that you possess an eye for refinement and perhaps even a hint of adventure. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the master perfumer and purveyor of exquisite fragrances. My potions will transport you to realms both familiar and unknown." He hands you a delicate vial filled with shimmering liquid, presenting it as if offering a treasure from an enchanted realm. "This is my crowning achievement," Munificus declares proudly. "A fragrance that embodies the essence of Rome itself, its power, elegance, and je ne sais quoi. Allow me to explain. As we Romans are wont to say, cum odoribus victoria sequitur, victory follows with sense." You politely take a whiff of the offered vial, your nostrils pinching at the overpowering bouquet that assaults them. While it's not unpleasant per se, you can't help but think that this concoction might be an acquired taste. "Ah," Munificus chimes in, chuckling knowingly as he observes your reaction. "I see I've caught your attention, but perhaps also raised a few eyebrows. Allow me to assure you, it's merely a representation of the unbridled majesty and raw force that lies at Rome's very heart." He leans in conspiratorially, voice taking on an air of mystery as he continues. "Of course, there are other fragrances available, rather more discreet ones. You see, to truly smell like a Roman is not merely about dousing oneself with perfume or scented oils. It's about embracing the essence that lies beneath the surface. Munificus glances around cautiously before winking at you. Want to try something a bit more authentic? Perhaps I can offer you some genuine garum fish sauce straight from our coast. Your eyes widen in alarm as Munificus rummages through his shelves for an unassuming clay jar. You recall reading about this infamous condiment somewhere, but hadn't quite grasped the full extent of its pungency. You murmur hesitantly, unsure whether to thank him or politely decline. Munificus simply beams at your curiosity and begins carefully opening a small vial from his collection. He pours a few drops onto the palm of his hand, whereupon they promptly proceed to emit an odor so overpowering that it's almost as if someone has lit a match near you. Fear not, my friend, Munificus chuckles reassuringly, holding out the jar with its contents still seeping from the opened vial. This is merely garum, our sacred fish sauce, and trust me when I say, once acquired, one can hardly imagine life without it. His eyes sparkle as he gestures toward his stall, pointing to an assortment of tiny clay jars containing different concentrations of this infamous condiment. Come now, Munificus says with a mischievous grin. Indulge in the true essence of Rome on your skin at least. Who needs perfume when you can capture the raw power and pungency that truly defines our beloved city-state? Your mind reels as you ponder this peculiar proposition. Should I sample some garum to see if it lives up to its reputation? The cloying stench of stale bread wafts through the air, clinging to your clothes like a damp shroud as you push open the creaky door of the tavern. The sign above it reads Mercurius Rest, but its name is not what draws you in. It's the promise of a warm meal and a dry spot to collapse after a long day of navigating Rome's winding streets. You step inside, your eyes adjusting slowly to the dim light within. A faint haze of smoke from last night's fire clings to the air, making everything feel slightly fuzzy around the edges. The room is small, with only about 24 patrons scattered among the wooden benches and tables. You spot a few familiar faces, that gruff old veteran by the door who always seems to be nursing some lingering injury, the young couple huddled in the corner, their whispers barely audible over the murmur of conversation. The air inside is thick with the smells of cooking oil, sweat, and yesterday's ale. You can almost taste the stale bread on your tongue as you make your way to an empty stool at the bar. The bartender, a gruff but kind-eyed man named Marcus, greets you with a nod and asks what he can get for you. You order something simple, a plate of fried fish, some flatbread, and a cup of wine. As you wait for your food to arrive, you take in the scene around you. The tavern's patrons are an eclectic bunch, a pair of rowdy legionnaires on leave laughing loudly as they down cups of ale, a group of haggard-looking merchants, their faces pinched from days spent navigating Rome's crowded markets, and a lone figure sitting at the back, hood up over his head, sipping a cup of wine with an air of quiet contemplation. Your gaze drifts to the old veteran by the door. He catches your eye and nods in greeting, or perhaps it's just that he's nodding off into sleep as usual. You watch for a moment, wondering what stories he might tell if only you could get him to open up. But his eyes are closed now, and his chest rises and falls with the slow rhythm of deep breathing. Your food arrives, and Marcus slides it onto the counter in front of you with a flourish. The fried fish is crispy on the outside, soft within, exactly what you needed after a long day's walk through Rome's streets. You take a bite, savoring the flavors as they explode on your tongue. For a moment, everything else fades away. The noise, the crowds, the stench of stale bread and yesterday's ale. As you eat, you notice that the tavern is quietening down. Patrons are starting to drift out into the evening air, seeking some fresh breeze after the long day inside. The merchant group has left already, muttering something about a late meeting with a potential client. You wonder if they'll ever get their business off the ground. The old veteran by the door stirs now, his eyes flicking open as he takes in the emptying room. He looks around, puzzled, or perhaps just annoyed that nobody's buying him another round of ale. As you watch, a young girl comes over and hands him a steaming bowl from behind the bar. It smells like chicken soup, rich with vegetables and herbs. "Ah," he says, his voice gruff but grateful as he takes the bowl in both hands. "Thank you, child." The little one beams at you before scurrying off to help Marcus clear tables. You finish your meal, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over you. Maybe it's just because you're finally fed, or maybe it's something more. But for now, all that matters is the simple pleasure of being here, surrounded by these people and their stories. As you push back from the counter, the old veteran catches your eye once more. This time he nods at something behind you, perhaps a point about the tavern itself. You turn to look, spotting an ancient stone marker on the wall that reads, "Built 15 BCE." Something in his expression seems almost knowing. "Marcus," someone nearby says loudly enough for everyone to hear, "the date's wrong. This place must have been around before even that." The room falls silent as every patron turns to stare at whoever made this claim. Old-timers start talking among themselves, nodding and muttering about some obscure historical detail or other. The young couple leans in closer, their whispers growing more urgent. Your eyes flicker between them all, the veterans with their furrowed brows, Marcus behind the counter wiping down a mug as he looks around nervously. Even that hooded figure at the back, now sipping wine with an almost calculating air. You wonder what it would take to settle this little debate once and for all. For now, however, you simply lean against the bar stool and listening to their conversations, watching them as they turn out into the cool evening air of Rome's streets. As you listen and watch, the conversations around you grow louder, more animated, and more heated. The wine flows freely now, and the laughter rings out across the tavern's cramped interior. You take a sip from your own cup, feeling the familiar tang of Italian red on your tongue. To one side, a group of young men are engaged in a spirited argument over the merits of various chariot designs. One insists that only a four-horse team can produce the necessary speed and agility to navigate the twisting course of the Circus Maximus. Another counters with tales of his uncle's six-horse Charioteer who won handily at last year's festival. Nearby, an older man leans in close to a younger one, whispering something that makes the young man look up in alarm. You can't quite make out what they're saying, but their body language suggests a serious discussion, possibly even a wager or two. The old man glances around the tavern with a mixture of calculation and suspicion, making you wonder if there's more to this conversation than meets the eye. You continue to eavesdrop, your ears drinking in the various threads of conversation that crisscross the room. A pair of women nearby are speculating about which driver will emerge victorious from tomorrow's big race, their voices rising into excited squeals as they weigh the chances of each contender. Outside, the evening air is growing cooler by the minute. Street vendors begin to pack up for the night, leaving behind a scattering of customers who linger in front of the tavern, reluctant to leave even with the darkness gathering. The city's ancient stones seem to absorb and amplify every sound, the clinking glasses from inside, the rumble of cart wheels on cobblestones, and the distant thrumming of drums that signal the coming night. Your gaze drifts around the room once more, taking in the assortment of characters who have gathered here. Some are clearly locals, known to one another by name or family ties. Others appear to be travelers, pilgrims perhaps. Lord traders on their way from afar. You catch a glimpse of an ornate ring glinting on one hand and wonder if its owner might have stories worth sharing. Your eyes settle back on the old man with whom you'd earlier been observing. He catches your gaze now, his expression flickering for an instant before he turns away, taking another sip from his cup. There's something in that brief exchange, perhaps a momentary jolt of recognition. A connection sparked by some shared secret or common experience. As the night wears on and the tavern begins to clear out, you find yourself becoming more engrossed in the conversations around you. You're drawn into debates over tactics, strategies, and even rumors about hidden rivalries within the racing community. The old man catches your eye once more. This time a faint nod from him seems almost an invitation. "Tell me," he says, his voice low and deliberate as he leans closer to you across the bar stool. "You seem interested in our little debate. You think perhaps we're not just discussing chariot racing." The question hangs suspended between you for what feels like a moment longer than necessary before you nod, curiosity getting the better of any hesitations. "Perhaps," you say carefully. "Tell me more about it." A small, enigmatic smile plays on his lips as he leans back in his chair, letting out a low chuckle that sends ripples through the air around him. "Well, my friend," he begins, and for an instant you think that's all there is to this conversation, some light entertainment before drifting off into the night. But something about the way he speaks now has changed. There's a glint in his eye that seems almost calculating, as if everything about the past few hours has been leading up to this precise moment. "Let me tell you," he continues, "the art of chariot racing is not merely one of speed or agility. It involves something far more essential, timing." The scent of damp earth wafts through the air, carrying with it memories of last night's rain and the promise of a cooler morning to come. You are lying on a narrow pallet in a small domus near the Circus Maximus, surrounded by the quiet murmur of the city waking up. A faint light seeps under the door, casting shadows on the walls as you listen to the distant rumble of chariots being prepared for today's games. The sound is familiar and comforting, like the gentle hum of a lullaby. You snuggle deeper into your blanket, feeling the softness of the wool against your skin. As you drift in and out of sleep, your mind starts to wander back to yesterday's events at the Circus Maximus. You recall watching a particularly skilled driver expertly navigate the turns, his chariot thundering past with a speed that made your heart skip a beat. The roar of the crowd still echoes in your ears, but it's muffled now by the morning calm. You try to remember what you were thinking about as you watched the games. Perhaps it was something trivial like wondering how the driver managed not to spill his drink while racing at such high speeds. Or maybe it was something more profound, like contemplating the meaning of life in relation to the fleeting nature of human existence. Whatever it was, it's now lost in the haze of sleep. The sound of footsteps outside your door breaks through the quiet. It's a slow and deliberate pace, as if someone is carrying a heavy load or trying not to wake you up. The footsteps pause for a moment before continuing on their way, leaving behind only the faint creaking of wooden beams underfoot. You're aware that it's still early morning, but your stomach growls with hunger nonetheless. It's time to get out of bed and join the day-to-day routine of daily life in Rome. You swing your legs over the side of the pallet and plant your feet firmly on the ground, feeling the cool tile beneath your toes. As you stand up, a dull ache spreads through your lower back from sleeping on the hard surface all night. It's a familiar sensation that comes with sharing cramped quarters with family members or lodgers in this small domus. You take a moment to stretch and arch your back, trying to loosen the tension before heading off to find some breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread wafts through the streets as you step out into the morning light. It's a tantalizing scent that draws you towards the nearby Thermopolis, one of those establishments where food is sold from large urns and served in smaller vessels for a few coins. You quicken your pace, eager to sample some warm pannies with perhaps a bit of honey or olives. Inside the Thermopolis, it's bustling with activity as people gather around the counters, placing their orders or waiting to collect their food. The air is thick with chatter and clinking vessels, an assortment of pottery jars, wooden bowls, and metal cups that make up the everyday tableware in ancient Rome. As you join the queue, your eyes scan the offerings on display. Neatly stacked loaves, jugs of oil, bunches of fresh herbs, or baskets overflowing with vegetables. You notice a small selection of dates, imported from distant lands to provide an exotic flavor and texture for Roman cuisine. The prices are listed alongside each item in neat little tablets attached to the counter. A soft voice behind you clears its throat, breaking into your reverie about food prices and seasonal availability of various ingredients. It's one of the Thermopolis staff members, a young man with a look of quiet diligence as he oversees the operation. A good morning. Can I help you order something? I blinked slowly, trying to shake off the haze that still lingered in my mind from the previous night's reverie about cooking for the upcoming festival. The young staff member's voice cut through it like a splash of cold water on a summer day. A good morning. Can I help you order something? He asked with a hint of friendly curiosity, his eyes darting to the empty cup and plate in front of me as if expecting to see some semblance of breakfast or snack. I smiled sheepishly, feeling a twinge of guilt for neglecting my usual morning routine. Ah, yes, good morning, I replied, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. Actually, just a coffee would be wonderful, thank you. The staff member nodded efficiently and began expertly crafting the beverage while we chatted about nothing in particular, the weather, his day ahead, the upcoming games at the Circus Maximus. As he handed me the steaming cup of Thermopolis-made coffee, I found myself drifting back into my earlier thoughts. The Circus Maximus was always a topic that fascinated and intimidated me in equal measure. Its sheer size and history were awe-inspiring. Over 250,000 spectators could pack its grandstands on any given day. "Excuse me," I said to the staff member as he busied himself with wiping down the counter, "but have you ever attended one of these chariot races? Or even worked at the Circus Maximus?" He paused mid-wipe and leaned against the counter, a hint of excitement flickering across his features. "Yeah, actually, I've been there once for my father's birthday as an assistant to a lictor," he said with a smile that seemed tinged with both pride and embarrassment. "Oh, a lictor." I raised an eyebrow in genuine curiosity. That was some serious business, not something you'd normally associate with birthdays or leisure activities at the circus. "What made your dad choose such a colorful way to celebrate his special day?" He chuckled softly before launching into a brief tale of how it had been more than just an impromptu decision. How his father had served under one of the local magistrates for years and was finally granted permission to accompany him as part of their retinue. "It was unforgettable," he admitted wistfully. The conversation flowed like that, effortlessly meandering from topic to topic. Food prices, as I'd started out thinking about, seasonal produce, favorite dishes in the Thermopolis kitchen, and eventually, after a brief pause for another coffee refill, onto more serious subjects. The Circus Maximus was brought up again, this time in the context of his observations about it during that one visit. "It's amazing," he mused aloud as if continuing an earlier discussion I couldn't quite recall participating in. "I mean, you think those chariots are going to crash all over the place or get derailed somehow, but they glide across like precision instruments." Gliding, a very apt description for something that could become airborne at any moment and hurtle its occupants toward death at high speeds. "Did you notice how the drivers move?" I asked him, intrigued by his perspective. "They're usually pretty stoic in front of all those spectators, but there's an air about them, almost a calculated tension." He nodded thoughtfully as if weighing each word carefully before speaking. "Yes, it is intense. But have you ever wondered how they prepare for such events?" I must have looked puzzled because he elaborated further. "Training regimes, superstitions around their equipment or personal talismans. It's almost like a mysterious ritual." My curiosity was piqued now. I pulled out my worn notebook from its hiding place beneath the counter and flipped to an empty page at random. As we talked, several things began to surface, questions that had been buried in the recesses of my mind for what felt like years, but seemed more pressing with every passing minute. The intricacies behind chariot training regimens. Which role did divine intervention play in these events? And most notably, just how extensively influential were various factions or patronage networks within the Senate on such high-profile competitions? A few scribbled notes caught my eye as I realized that this casual conversation might actually provide a catalyst for some genuine exploration, possibly even an opportunity to delve into areas I had previously overlooked due to lack of direct access. I smiled softly at the staff member, feeling grateful for our impromptu exchange. The sun outside was starting its slow ascent toward noon now, time enough yet to grab another cup and carry on discussing what Roman chariot racing, with all its attendant politics, superstitions, and physical prowess, truly represented. The warmth of the morning sun seeps into your bones as you sit on a stone bench, cradling a cup of steaming hot pasca in your hands. The air is still thick with the scent of yesterday's cooking fires, and the distant tang of fresh bread wafting from the nearby bakery. You take a sip of the vinegar-based wine substitute, feeling its familiar bitter taste tickle your tongue. The conversation around you has grown quieter now that the morning sun beats down on the gathered crowd. The talk turns to more mundane matters. What game will be played at tomorrow's festival? Whose turn it is to provide the next batch of fresh vegetables for the communal kitchen? You listen in, nodding along as the discussion meanders from one topic to another. The nearby charioteer, victorious, stretches his muscular arms above his head and yawns widely, revealing a gap-toothed grin. He's been working on polishing his racing gear for weeks now. Every time you see him, he's tinkering with something or other, adjusting the curve of this wheel, testing the springiness of that axle. Still planning to enter the next big event? Someone asks Victorious, and he nods enthusiastically as if it wasn't a given. I've got my eye on that new track near the campus Martius, heard they're building some fancy curves. You watch with mild interest as Victorious launches into an animated discussion about racing techniques and gear design, gesturing widely with his arms to emphasize points. To your left stands Marcus, the local merchant who's been hawking a variety of goods from his stall for years. He's carefully arranging a selection of pottery vases on display racks, making sure each one is perfectly aligned and visible to potential customers. As he works, you catch glimpses of intricate designs, snakes curled around handles, delicate patterns etched into glaze. Marcus has been doing this for as long as anyone can remember. Some say his family's business stretches back generations. His eyes are a deep shade of brown that seem almost black in the morning light, with fine wrinkles at the corners from years spent squinting up at sunlight filtering through awnings or leaning into smoke-filled taverns. Next to Marcus' stall stands another merchant, one selling a motley assortment of trinkets and second-hand items. He's sorting through a pile of discarded ceramics on his tabletop, searching for anything worth reselling or repairing. You catch glimpses of fragments from broken amphorae, mismatched handles for what appear to be ancient lamps. The air carries the scent of fresh-cut wood. Some construction project nearby is still underway, but beneath it lies something else, a heavy layer of soot and grime that clings to everything in this busy market square. You can taste its acrid tang when you take another sip from your Posca cup. Marcus looks up, noticing the merchant's latest finds on display. "Ah, good luck with those," he says dryly, raising an eyebrow at the assortment of trinkets. "Think anyone'll be interested in buying a few broken bits?" The nearby charioteer chuckles and adds his own opinion, something about people wanting all sorts of things as long as they're shiny, before launching into another animated conversation. Your gaze wanders back to Marcus, who shrugs good-naturedly at the merchant's wares. He goes on rearranging his pottery vases with a practiced hand, carefully placing each one in its designated spot so that it catches the morning light just right. As you sit there watching, someone nearby mentions an upcoming festival, not for another week or two yet, but something to look forward to at least. It'll be held near the Circus Maximus. Word is they've arranged a special ceremony honoring Jupiter with music and dancing in honor of his birthday. You listen idly as the discussion around you turns more serious, considering what each person will contribute, whether it's food for the feast or perhaps some sort of performance. Marcus leans back against his stall, running a hand over his forehead to wipe away sweat that's already starting to form despite the morning chill in the air. It seems Victorious has finished talking about racing techniques and is now asking around for advice on how best to handle the new track near Campus Martius. Perhaps someone with more experience can offer some insights. The merchant nearby chimes in, offering an opinion based on what he's seen of various tracks throughout his travels. While not directly relevant, it still sparks a lively discussion. The morning sun beats down relentlessly now, making everything feel hotter and heavier than before. Sweat starts to trickle along your forehead as you sit there. Something that usually takes longer to develop is happening faster today for some reason. You realize you must have missed the market's usual early morning cooling breeze. Perhaps it was just a brief respite. Marcus glances up at his pottery vases and seems satisfied they're arranged correctly this time, so he stands up from leaning against his stall to stretch. Not much more than an inch or two taller than average, but there's something about the way he moves that suggests he knows exactly how to get where he wants. As he stretches, you notice a small child watching him with wide eyes from across the square. Marcus catches her gaze and gives a brief nod before returning his attention to arranging his remaining goods, probably just acknowledging she exists rather than encouraging any sort of interaction. Time passes in fits and starts as conversations continue around you. Victorious is now talking about an especially tricky turn he encountered on one occasion, while another person nearby asks if anyone knows where the next town meeting will take place. Marcus continues with his rearranging duties, but occasionally pauses to answer someone's question or offer a joke. Eventually, the sun reaches its peak overhead, directly above you for what feels like just a moment before drifting towards noon. With it comes more heat and an increased sense of languor as everyone starts feeling their energy levels dwindle. Perhaps this is why conversations seem slightly less animated now than they were earlier on. Marcus pauses mid-task to consult his pocket calendar, running a thumb over worn pages as he checks the date. Just another minor detail amidst all these discussions about festivals and racing tracks. The air remains thick with the scent of cooking smoke and fresh bread. You can almost smell yesterday's leftovers lingering in someone's kitchen nearby. As Marcus finishes consulting his schedule, he leans back against his stall once more to wipe at a sweat-dampened forehead. You notice that Victorious has wandered off somewhere, probably seeking shade or cool water after their morning of conversation. Marcus seems lost in thought for a moment as he runs his hand over the smooth surface of one particularly fine vase. Perhaps something on his mind is bothering him. After all, there's always some worry or other lurking beneath even the most casual-sounding discussions about market days and festivals. Who knows what weighty issues each person carries around inside their head? The morning sun remains high in the sky now, casting long shadows across the square as it continues its steady climb towards noon. You're starting to feel your own energy levels flag. Perhaps this is why conversations seem slightly less animated than they were earlier on. As you pause to take in your surroundings, a vendor catches your eye, juggling three gleaming silver cups while performing an intricate dance on his toes. The smell of freshly baked bread wafts from a nearby stall, enticing passers-by with its savory aroma. You notice a group of children gathered around the base of a towering stone statue, their laughter and shouts carrying through the square as they attempt to decipher the carvings that adorn its pedestal. A gentle breeze stirs the dust beneath your feet, causing you to brush it off with a handkerchief. The air is thick with the scent of olive oil, sweat, and roasting meat, a testament to the bustling activity within the city's walls. You take a sip from your flask, feeling the cool liquid soothe your parched throat. As the morning wears on, you become aware of a growing sense of anticipation in the air. It begins with hushed whispers among the gathered crowds, and gradually builds into excited chatter as people speculate about the events that will unfold today. Some mention rumors of an impending visit from the imperial family. Others discuss the latest developments in the ongoing disputes between rival factions vying for control. A young man, sporting a bold red cloak draped over his shoulder, steps forward to address the crowd. He stands atop a makeshift platform, surveying the sea of faces before him with an air of authority that belies his youth. His words are impassioned and laced with fervor as he speaks about the gods' abandonment of Rome and their replacement by newer idols, those deities born from human ingenuity rather than divine decree. His speech is met with varying degrees of enthusiasm, some listeners nodding in rapt attention while others jeer or mutter disapprovingly. You observe a group of burly men seated at the edge of the crowd, their faces set in scowls as they seem to seethe with discontent. The young speaker's message appears to be resonating strongly among those who feel disillusioned by the city's rapid changes, yet it also seems to have polarized opinion. As you continue to observe this microcosm within a microcosm, you notice a change in the crowd's mood. A few steps away from where you're standing, a small group of people begin to chant Veil. In unison, their voices growing louder with each repetition until they form a kind of call and response pattern that spreads throughout the square. A nearby scribe, his quill poised above a sheet of papyrus as he records an account of events for posterity's sake, glances up from his work to watch this unfolding drama. His brow furrows in concern. Clearly, tensions are running high, and it may not be long before things turn violent. It is then that you catch sight of a figure emerging from the city gate, a woman clad in elegant finery with an entourage at her heels. Her presence sends ripples through the crowd as whispers spread about who she might be and what this portentous arrival signifies for Rome's future. As the square becomes increasingly agitated, it is difficult to gauge whether any given event has come from mere coincidence or some more calculated design. Yet amidst all these shifting currents of emotion and intrigue, one thing remains certain. In this city on a sweltering summer day when gods are said to have abandoned their thrones for newer idols, the very fabric of reality seems ever so slightly frayed. Your gaze lingers upon the woman as she makes her way deeper into the square. Her carriage, draped with regal symbols and attended by liveried guards, moves at a stately pace through the throngs, leaving behind an impression that is both measured yet quietly powerful. The atmosphere within the city remains charged with anticipation. While people's expectations may vary widely on what this day will bring, you sense that all eyes are fixed upon her as a harbinger of potential change or perhaps even upheaval. For in Rome today, where myth and history seem about to collide in spectacular fashion, nothing is ever quite certain except the thrill of uncertainty. The square around you continues its animated dance, with vendors calling out to passers-by and scribes hurrying to keep pace as they document every step of this unfolding drama for posterity's sake. The air remains thick with tension and curiosity. Within hours, Rome will see a spectacle unfold that has captivated the world. The iconic chariot races that blur reality between triumphs of human skill and the capricious whims of fate itself. As you ponder these events against their historical backdrop, this time-honored tradition which draws spectators from across the land to witness its drama, your thoughts inevitably turn towards understanding what a Roman chariot race was actually like. The scent of fresh bread wafts through the air, carried on a gentle breeze that rustles the awnings above the market stalls. You breathe deeply, feeling the morning's chill begin to dissipate as you make your way towards the chariot racing track. It is early afternoon in Rome, and the sun casts long shadows across the sandy surface of the Circus Maximus. The air is alive with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares. Fresh fruit, roasted meats, woven baskets, all competing for attention amidst the throngs of spectators gathering to witness the latest chariot racing event. You push through a particularly dense cluster of onlookers, careful not to jostle anyone as you make your way towards a stall selling freshly baked panis focaccious. The vendor's name is Marcus, and he greets you with a warm smile as you browse his offerings. "Try one of my special breads," he says, holding up a perfectly golden brown loaf. "I've added some extra olive oil for an extra burst of flavor." You take a bite, savoring the subtle tang of the olives mingling with the rich scent of freshly baked dough. The bread is warm and crusty on the outside, soft within exactly as you like it. As you continue to shop, your attention drifts towards the track itself. The sand beneath your feet begins to shift in response to each footstep, grains slipping between your toes. You watch a group of spectators eagerly examining a section of the track's stone seating. Some are carefully repairing broken stones, while others simply lean against them for support. Your thoughts turn towards understanding what a Roman chariot race was actually like, the experience of witnessing these events in person. How did it feel to be surrounded by such a massive gathering? What were your expectations, and how often did they align with reality? You recall that each racing event typically began around mid-morning. However, on particularly hot or cold days, contests might commence as late as 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The starting time was usually decided based on when the sun reached its highest point, about noon. To your right stands a large stone monument dedicated to Emperor Trajan's military victories. It appears well-worn from countless years of exposure to both sun and weather, yet still maintains an impressive grandeur amidst the bustling market scene. The inscription at its base lists some of his notable conquests: Dacorum et Sarmatii Victor, victor over Dacia and Sarmatia. You continue browsing Marcus's stall, exchanging a few pleasantries with nearby vendors while you ponder your next purchase. Your focus shifts towards the merchandise being displayed on one side of the track, an assortment of items including beautifully crafted racing wreaths made from woven laurel branches, symbols of victory for those drivers who emerged triumphant. As a spectator yourself, what was it like attending these events? Did you feel the same sense of excitement that gripped the Roman crowds, or did your personal perspectives set them apart? To return to the track's surface, note how the sand beneath is now slightly compressed from increased foot traffic. It still offers an uneven, shifting sensation with each step, not as smooth as a well-maintained walkway, but certainly safer than navigating through muddy streets. The vendors nearby have started packing up their goods for another day of business. It seems that racing events usually drew more spectators on hot summer days, when the city's population was at its largest. This added to the excitement and heightened sense of competition among drivers competing in those specific conditions. Your journey around the stalls eventually leads you towards a small, unassuming store tucked away near one corner of the complex. Inside lies an unusual assortment of items related to chariot racing, from decorative models showcasing various aspects of the sport, e.g., team tactics and equipment, to intricately crafted figurines representing individual drivers. On your left stands another prominent building, the Basilica Julia, part of a grand architectural project initiated during Augustus's reign. Although this particular area seems relatively less crowded than other sections of the complex, you can still hear snippets of conversation between onlookers discussing everything from racing strategies to politics. The scent of fresh bread has now given way to a faint whiff of wood smoke carried by an occasional gust of wind. Perhaps someone nearby is burning incense or cooking over an open flame. This subtle addition enhances the overall sensory atmosphere surrounding you, transporting your senses into this historical setting as if by osmosis. Time seems to be passing at its own pace. Even though it's already mid-afternoon, there remains a lingering sense of anticipation in the air, a mixture of tension and expectation that usually accompanies public events like these. As I stood amidst the swirling crowds, the air thick with excitement and nervous energy, my gaze drifted to the makeshift grandstands that ringed the chariot racing track. They were a maze of wooden platforms, tier upon tier, each one packed tightly with people from all walks of life. Merchants, nobles, slaves, and freemen alike, all united in their desire to witness the spectacle about to unfold. To my left, a group of rowdy spectators were already placing wagers on the outcome, their voices rising above the din as they shouted out bets and curses. The scent of wine and sweat hung heavy over them, mingling with the sweet smell of fresh bread wafting from nearby food stalls. Further along, I spotted a handful of dignitaries standing apart from the crowd, their finery a stark contrast to the rough-and-tumble atmosphere that reigned elsewhere. As for me, I found myself drawn back into the thrall of history, my senses drinking in every detail as if it were all unfolding anew. The sun beat down upon us, its rays glinting off the polished surfaces of the chariots parked at the starting gate. Each one was a finely crafted work of art, adorned with gleaming brass and bronze fittings, their teams of horses pawing nervously on the starting line. A murmur began to spread through the crowd as the heralds took up their positions along the track's perimeter. Silenzio, they cried out in unison, raising their arms high above their heads. The air fell still for a moment, and then, with a burst of energy that seemed almost tangible, the racing began. The chariots thundered into motion, leaving behind a trail of dust and chaos as they careened around the track's curves. Each team, 4 horses to the axle, strained forward in perfect synchronization, their hooves pounding out a rhythmic drumbeat on the packed earth below. I found myself caught up in the pace of it all, my heart racing with excitement as I watched each driver expertly navigate the turns and straights. The roar of the crowd swelled to a deafening crescendo as one team gained ground, only for another to surge ahead in its wake. Sweat-drenched riders clung tightly to their reins, their faces set in fierce determination as they battled it out for victory. The air was thick with tension, each moment seemed poised on the brink of disaster or triumph. And yet, amidst all this fervor and chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this event than met the eye. Whispers began to circulate among those in attendance about an alleged curse said to haunt these racing grounds. Some claimed it had been placed upon them by a vengeful spirit, perhaps one of the countless slaves or gladiators who'd lost their lives here over the years. A hushed murmur ran through the ranks as more details emerged, tales of a hidden tomb buried beneath our very feet, and whispers that certain individuals among the racing elite had grown increasingly reckless in recent months. It seemed that at least one prominent driver, rumored to be on his final season before retirement, was said to have received mysterious threats from unknown sources. Rumors swirled about dark omens, unseasonable storms forecast for later that evening, reports of blood-splattered sacrifices spotted near the track's entrance. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, even as I reveled in the sheer thrill and spectacle of it all. And yet, caught up though I was in this frenzied atmosphere, a nagging voice persisted within me. What lay hidden beneath our feet? What had been buried here only to be forgotten over time? My gaze drifted downward once more, scouring the ground for any sign of the supposed tomb. The earth seemed to stretch out endlessly before us, or so it did until you spotted the faint outline of a stonework structure partially buried in its depths. You notice a faint scent of roasting meat carried on the breeze as you make your way through the crowded streets of Rome. It's early evening, and the sun has begun its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the cobblestone roads. People are hurrying to get home for dinner, their footsteps echoing off the stone buildings. You see a group of vendors setting up shop near the forum, their baskets overflowing with fresh produce. Bunches of herbs tied together with twine, pyramids of juicy fruit, and baskets of what looks like freshly baked bread. As you continue on your way, the smell of roasting meat grows stronger. You follow it to a small eatery tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The sign above the door reads Mamertinus Food. Mamertinus is likely the owner or cook. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of slow-cooked pork and vegetables. The atmosphere inside Mamertinus Food is cozy, if not exactly clean. The tables are cramped together, and the floor seems to be sticky beneath your feet. But people seem to like it here. A few patrons are chatting quietly in one corner, while others slurp noodles from steaming bowls. You take a seat at an empty table near the back, feeling a bit out of place but trying not to draw attention. The menu above the counter lists all sorts of dishes you've never tried before. Something called mortem, which looks like a mix of herbs and cheese on toast, and another dish that seems to be made from boiled vegetables. You opt for what's described as a simple soup, hoping it'll fill your belly after a long day. The cook, Mamertinus himself, he is busy stirring something in the back kitchen, his face glistening with sweat despite the relatively cool evening air outside. The sounds of sizzling and simmering come from that direction, accompanied by the occasional shout or curse as he navigates the tiny space. You watch him for a bit, fascinated by how he seems to be juggling multiple tasks at once, stirring pots on different fires while expertly rolling out small balls of dough. When your soup arrives, it's steaming hot and surprisingly flavorful despite its humble appearance. The vegetables are tender but not mushy, the broth rich without being overpowering. You slurp it down quickly, feeling a sense of satisfaction as you finish off the last bits of liquid. As you sit there enjoying the meal and trying to collect your thoughts, The sounds from outside begin to change, people shouting in excitement, horse hooves clattering against stone pavement. You glance out the window and see that another day's worth of business is coming to a close. People are beginning to gather near the forum, chatting among themselves as they go about their evening routines. Nearby, you notice an elderly man sitting at his own table. He looks like a merchant or trader, dressed in worn but decent clothes. He seems lost in thought, staring intently at something on his hand. You catch glimpses of it, an intricately carved ring perhaps. The light from the candles makes it difficult to tell. You return your attention to your own meal, savoring what's left of the soup while trying not to eavesdrop too much on the nearby conversations. But it's hard not to overhear snippets. Someone near you mentions that there's been a bit of trouble in one of the outer provinces. Another group talks about the recent arrival of some new goods from Egypt. As your meal comes to an end, Mamertinus appears at your table once more, this time with his face alight with concern. "You're not going anywhere for dinner tonight?" he asks, nodding towards a small side room tucked away near the back. "My sister's here, she's cooking up some of her special dishes." His eyes seem to plead with you, "Come and see what we have." "What do you do?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I was in the mood for a family gathering and the inevitable pressure to eat large quantities of food. But there was something about Marcus's expression that put me at ease. He seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being, and his eyes sparkled with warmth as he invited me to join them. I nodded and followed him towards the small side room tucked away near the back. The aroma of roasting meats wafted out into the main hall, making my stomach growl in anticipation. We entered the cozy room, where I found Marcus's sister, Awry, busy at a large wooden table laden with platters of food. She smiled warmly as she greeted me, her dark hair tied back in a neat bun and a sprinkle of flour on her cheek. "You're welcome. Come, sit down. We've saved you the best seat." She patted the chair next to hers, indicating I should take it. As we sat down, Marcus poured us each a cup of wine from an ornate jug. Awry was expertly juggling 3 different pots on a nearby hearth, their contents bubbling and steaming in unison. "Tonight's menu features my famous garum-infused chicken," she announced with pride, "and some delicacies I picked up at the market this morning." I took a sip of wine, feeling a little more comfortable as we chatted about our day. Awry asked me questions about my interests and hobbies, but Marcus kept steering the conversation back to his concerns about the upcoming chariot races. "I'm telling you it's not safe," he said for what felt like the 100th time that week. "The track conditions are treacherous this season, and those new horses they brought in from Gaul. I don't trust them." Awry shot him a warning glance, but Marcus persisted. I tried to intervene, changing the subject back to my own thoughts on the races, but he was too caught up in his arguments. Just as we were about to get into another heated discussion, a loud crash echoed from outside the room. We all turned to look at each other uncertainly. "What's that?" Awry asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Marcus leapt out of his seat and dashed towards the door, followed closely by me. As we entered the main hall, I saw that a large serving dish had fallen off one of the tables, scattering food everywhere. But it wasn't just any ordinary food, it was Marcus's prized possession, a beautifully crafted bronze statue of Hercules. It can't be, he muttered, staring at the broken remains in horror. Oh, that's priceless. I quickly surveyed the area, trying to figure out who might have caused the accident. That's when I spotted him, none other than our esteemed patron, Lucius Furius himself, hastily making his way towards the rear of the house. "Yeah," Marcus muttered darkly under his breath. "Looks like someone else has a problem with his dinner table conversation." Aurelia shot me an exasperated look. "And now, I suppose we'll be discussing who broke that statue for the rest of the evening." She sighed and turned to start cleaning up the mess. I couldn't help but chuckle at Marcus's predicament. It seemed like even the most mundane social gatherings in Rome could turn into dramatic events with just a few careless words. But then I caught sight of Lucius Furius again, this time slipping out into the night under cover of shadows. As I watched Lucius Furius melt into the darkness, my mind began to wander back to Marcus's misadventure in the dining hall. It seemed like a trivial matter now, but it was hard not to laugh at the sheer audacity of the man who had tried to impress our host by boasting about his knowledge of Greek theater. I imagined him standing there, proudly declaring that he knew the entire script of The Clouds off by heart, only to be met with a chorus of groans and snickers from the other guests. I shook my head in amusement as I pondered the intricacies of Roman social etiquette. It was amazing how even the most seemingly innocuous conversations could quickly devolve into chaos at these dinner parties. Perhaps it was just me, but I had always thought that Romans were a bit too fond of dramatic flair and tendency to take themselves far too seriously. As I stood there lost in my musings, I heard a gentle voice behind me. "La Amaranthia, you seem like you're enjoying the spectacle." It was none other than our host's wife, Aurelia, who had sidled up beside me with an enigmatic smile on her face. I turned to greet her warmly, and we exchanged pleasantries about the evening so far. As she leaned in close, her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Tell me, what do you think of our esteemed Lucius Furius? Does he not remind you of that great orator Cicero?" Aurelia's eyes sparkled with mirth as I hesitated for a moment before responding. I wasn't sure whether she was genuinely curious about my opinion or just trying to tease me, but either way, I decided to play along. "Well, Aurelia," I began carefully, "I must say that Lucius does bear some resemblance to Cicero in his erudition and eloquence." Aurelia chuckled knowingly. "Ah, yes. And perhaps a bit too much like the great orator in terms of his capacity for getting himself into trouble as well." She giggled at her own witticism before sobering up slightly. "Seriously though, Amaranthia," she said with an air of importance, "Lucius's antics may seem amusing to us now, but I fear he has a habit of saying things that can be misinterpreted. We must keep our ears open and make sure we're not in the midst of something far more serious than just gossip." With that cryptic warning hanging in the air, Aurelia nodded discreetly towards Lucius's disappearing figure before turning back to me with an expectant look on her face. "Would you care for some wine, Amaranthia? It seems like we have a bit of time to kill before dinner begins." She held out a delicate crystal cup from which the rich aroma of Falernian wine wafted. As I accepted the offer and took a sip, our conversation flowed easily into discussions about everything from theater performances in Rome to their current crop harvests. The room was filled with laughter now, not quite as boisterous as before, but still lively enough that one could sense we were all connected by threads of shared experience. I couldn't help feeling grateful for this little soiree. It reminded me why I had always loved Roman gatherings. Despite their sometimes eccentricities and bombastic nature, there was an undeniable charm to them. Perhaps, as Lucius Furius would undoubtedly remind us at the next dinner party, a certain je ne sais quoi. We sipped our wine in comfortable silence for a few moments, until Aurelia's voice broke into my reverie once more. "Tell me, Amaranthia," she said softly, "what do you think of our Roman chariot races? Have you been to one before?" As I set down the cup and turned back towards her with genuine interest in her eyes, it was clear that Aurelia Furious saw far beyond the surface level of social gatherings. Tonight you've traveled through the misty veil of Roman antiquity, where the shadows danced upon the arena walls as chariots thundered by like distant fires that scorched the air. The scent of old bread wafted on tides going out to sea, carrying with it whispers of forgotten days. You walked among the hidden cupboards and storerooms, discovering secrets etched into columns that would soon be erased from memory. In the small taverns, stories were spun like spider silk, weaving tales of emperors' visits and lost bread. But what connects these vignettes? Perhaps it's the thread of human experience, the struggle to make a name for oneself, the search for sustenance in times of scarcity, the quest for identity in a world where roles shift like sand dunes. Amidst the glitz and grandeur lies a tale of everyday people striving to survive. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from. As you drift towards sleep, let the images fade like watercolors on wet paper, their colors bleeding into one another until all that remains is a soft focus of memory. The city's din recedes, replaced by an eerie silence. In this quietude, time itself becomes a tapestry of moments stitched together with patience and forgotten threads. The earth endures, its surface etched with the passage of ages, seasons blooming like wildflowers in abandoned gardens, and winters whispering their secrets to stones that have witnessed it all.